This story begins with the screams of a fleeing guy who is looking at his phone. He screams that a huge insect was right in front of him, then they start attacking him and the screen moves away. Someone is holding a phone in their hands and watching this video of what is happening, described earlier, asking if it is fake in front of him. University audience, students sit together and discuss the video that the young man showed. There are a lot of such videos on YouTube, a friend answers the guy. Where in ordinary life could such a huge insect come from? One of the guys asked, hinting that life is not a webtoon. Another young man, after watching the video, thought that something was similar in size to a person, not a beetle, and asked his friends what they thought about it. One of the guys, continuing to look at the phone, thought about how nice it would be to have such wings, as if like some kind of insect hero. Another young man in front of him was laughing at what a friend was saying. Holding the phone, the young man asked what was wrong and then another guy took his phone. It was Su Chang. He was looking at a classmate's phone and asking what was cool about insect wings. Wasn't it disgusting? Su Chang asked if the guys wanted to go with him. The girls offered to go for a drink. The guys were surprised to ask what the others wanted to drink because they had already gone yesterday. And the girls went to such events only for the sake of the friend who offered them. The young man had already started to give back, as one of the guys hugged him and said that they had not said anything against him. The other two bowed and were ready to join the event with joy. Su Chang was a rather intelligent and attractive youth who was aware of this. The young man had more than 5,000 followers on Instagram, and his school grades were always excellent. He was always invited by beautiful girls to alcoholic university parties. If we judge it all by the food chain, then our hero was its ruler, sitting at the very top. Perhaps some of you may think that these were infantile arguments of a young man. But a person, like an animal, lives in a group and all creatures such as lions or ants have a similar joint lifestyle. They all have some sort of rank. Our hero is the object of getting other people who followed him around, so the young man decided that this could only mean that he was the strongest. He would never want to give up such a university life for anything. The young man stood next to our hero and asked if it would be okay if Su Chan went to drink with other girls. Our hero did not understand what his friend was driving at. Then he turned around and pointed his finger at the girl, shouting his name. Su Chang was called by a girl and waved her hand at him. It was a beautiful girl with pink hair named Mai He. She was interested in where the young man was going with a smile on his face. A friend took the young man by the shoulder and reminded him that they were the official couple of their faculty. Around the young man envied and at the same time said that the guys were not dating. The guys stood around the young man and talked with tears in their eyes, but so that the girls could not see. They asked Mai He if she would go for a drink too, and the girl wondered. Then the guys added that Su Chang was also coming and it immediately excited her, the thought that she could have a drink with the young man. She rushed to Su Chang with the words that she would definitely go too. The friend who stood next to the hero thought that the girl would not refuse. Mai He ran at the young man with open arms and it scared him. He felt some kind of discharge and pushed the girl's hands away. She was no less surprised by what had happened. The guys who saw the situation could not understand what was happening to their friend. The guy apologized to everyone and, saying that he was not very well, asked his friends to go without him. Su Chang left, and the guys didn't understand why he changed his mind so suddenly. Sometimes the young man abruptly left his friends, and they could not understand the reason. Su Chang apologized to the guys, saying that he overdid it yesterday at the Faculty of Traditional Korean Wrestling and also ran 5 more laps. The young men were surprised, because they did not seem to have such a struggle. Su Chang left and wondered what was wrong with him, why he said about the Faculty of Wrestling. His repertoire of excuses had outlived itself. The young man had one secret that no one knew about. Not far from the young man there was a sad guy, and the young man said that their positions with this guy were quite similar. This guy has also changed a lot since the beginning of the semester. They said that he was a guy who got along well with people. But now for some reason he has become a loner. The reason for all this was complex, is all because you showed people what you are ashamed of. The young man once went too far with a drink and suddenly an allergy appeared on his face. Whether it was from alcohol or from something else, but at that moment the young man saw the disgust on the faces of his classmates and ran away. After that incident, the guy lost confidence in himself and began to walk alone. It was all obvious that every person has something that he would like to hide from others, and telling someone about it was tantamount to showing his weak spot. At that moment, there was a house in front of the young man, and he went into the apartment. Why did our hero talk about this topic? Such as he, a handsome man and the soul of the company. Only now the young man who was standing in front of the mirror and began to take off his clothes, under which there were bandages, and after taking them off, you realized that he also had one complex. There were wings behind the guy's back. He recalled today at uni and the conversation about insects, when he said that it was all ugly and disgusting. This could not be beautiful. These wings that were behind his back were disgusting, the young man thought. The whole reason was that they were dragonfly wings. When our hero was in high school, he sprayed the room from dragonflies flying into the apartment, and suddenly they all turned into powder, after which the young man accidentally inhaled it, and then he was tormented by nausea, and he could not fall asleep. The next morning, when the young man looked at himself in the mirror, he saw wings appear on his back. Hiding under the table, he began to be overcome by various thoughts that people might consider him a monster, and if he was caught, they would put experiments on him. Living in this fear, he could not sleep properly. He tried in every way to hide his wings and keep his distance from others, because he didn't want anyone around to see his wings. The young man refused to go to karaoke and gatherings with friends, and so his life passed alone. No one found out about his secret, and he was able to focus on going to university. However, speaking of one drawback, it was worth mentioning that constant loneliness was damn painful for a guy. Therefore, after entering the university, the young man went to a barber shop and decided to change. At first, he sorted out the wings, which he rewound with bandages. It was a little uncomfortable, but he was able to solve this problem much easier than he thought. After that, he gained self-confidence, thanks to a confident, bright expression on his face, attention to his hairstyle and clothes, as well as politeness to everyone, so he was able to change dramatically. Self-confidence is the first condition for great beginnings, as they say, and as a result, to the surprise of the guy, people began to reach out to him. He was one of the first to ask the young man for his number. However, our hero believed that as soon as everyone saw his disgusting wings of his student life, the end would come. The young man wanted to go for a drink with Mai-he, but for some reason, at this very moment, the wings always served as an obstacle for the young man. They seem to remind the young man that they are part of him. If he does not take off his clothes for a long time, then his muscles begin to numb, as if he had been sitting in one chair for a long time. For this reason, the young man had to leave abruptly, because he would not want anyone to see his wings, especially Mai-he. With these thoughts, the young man spread his wings and decided to leave the shower with one towel around his neck. But then, opening her eyes, Mai-he stood in front of him and looked at the guy in surprise. Frightened, both began to look at each other and shout, Mai-he for the reason that the young man was without clothes, and our hero because he did not expect to meet anyone at home, especially a girl. He immediately shut himself back in the bathroom and wondered about the girl's reaction, whether she noticed his wings or not, immediately deciding to ask her how she got to his house. The girl was embarrassed to say that the young man had the door open. Mai-he was standing near the bathroom door holding a bag of food and drinks in her hands, because the guys offered to get together for a drink at Su Chang's and told the girl to come first by giving his address. Our hero was angry that none of the guys informed the young man, and he got into such a situation because of this. The girl stood silently and looked at the door, after which she decided to ask the young man if he really left because he felt bad. The young man was surprised that she asked. Mai-he talked about what was bothering her, because it wasn't the first time the young man had left everyone so abruptly and left. Sometimes, she said, he looked like he was in pain, and she asked a question that very upset and frightened the young man, whether he was hiding something. Standing in the bathroom, looking at the floor, he replied that he was not hiding anything from her. Mai-he was silent, but after thinking about it, she put the package down and asked the young man to come out. He was surprised by her reaction. Then looking out from behind the door, he saw that Mai-he sat down on the floor next to the bathroom and said that they should go to the cinema today. She would wait for him until he came out of the bathroom. The young man tried to dodge, saying that he felt bad. But the girl didn't believe him. She started talking about how it was clear that the guy was not ill, and that he was constantly alone thinking about something, as if he was hiding something. She was sad from all these thoughts, and she understood that the young man would not share his experiences with her. For her it was it's a shame. And Mai-he reminded him of the story when a young man saved a girl from a student who was constantly following her. He, of course, remembered this. Then the girl told him that at that moment it looked selfishly ridiculous, and she did not understand why he got into someone else's business. But nevertheless she was very grateful to the young man, and if he did not hate her, then she would also like to get into someone else's business. She told the young man that he could turn to her for help and talk if something was bothering him. The guy was standing outside the door and looking at the ceiling, mentally thanked Mai-he for what a wonderful person she was and dressed and left, saying that they had to go to the cinema. But at the same time, the young man understood that he could not show the girl anything, even if she was so understanding and kind. And maybe it was the right decision. Going to the cinema for them, someone was watching, someone who looked like a mantis and smelled the feed. Arriving at the cinema, the young man tried to stop Mai-hee, who was ready to help everyone and participate in surveys from students. The girl was too kind and could not refuse those who asked her for something. Smiling, the girl showed that she was given a candy, from which she was happy, while she looked so beautiful that our hero was embarrassed. The young man's head was visited by the thought that if he and Mai-hee started dating. The guy was thinking about it when, sitting in the cinema, the girl, frightened, clung to him, and then decided to go to the toilet, spilling something from a glass on her jacket. The young man thought that someday he would have to tell her about his wings, and if she sees him like this, will Mai-hee continue to treat our hero as before? Then he decided that she would be scared. He couldn't admit to anyone that he was a monster. And I decided that now everything can go on as usual. Sitting in the cinema, suddenly everyone saw that the screen and the lights turned off. Something was wrong with the electricity and everyone was dissatisfied with what the action in the cinema ended. But then suddenly a young man who ran into the hall shouted about evacuation and asked everyone to leave the cinema right away. He shouted about a suspicious object that was in the building and at the same time had a weapon with him. Someone thought it was an event. But the young man dispelled their doubts, saying that it was an evacuation and everyone had to follow his instructions. But suddenly he froze and could no longer say anything. The same object that the guy had talked about earlier appeared from behind and dealt with the young man. Everyone, seeing the picture that happened in front of them, began to flee. Our hero did not understand what was happening. He looked at the fact that a man had just been killed in front of him and could not believe it. The hero realized that it was dangerous in the cinema and had to get out, but Mai-hee was still in the building. While everyone was running away, the monster saw our hero, knowing that he was looking for him and jumping next to the young man broke all the chairs in the cinema. The young man fell to the floor and looking at the hands of the monster that was in front of him, could not believe his eyes. His hands were not hands. And they heard each other. The young man asked what that monster was doing, then grinning. The monster realized that the young man had seen an insect man for the first time besides himself. Then the villain decided to ask and confirm his idea that the young man, like him, also drank an insect repellent called jungle juice. The young man looked at the monster in horror and did not understand what kind of jungle juice he was talking about. But then memories surfaced before him of the moment when in high school he sprayed the class with insect repellent, and if the monster was talking about it, then it simply could not be. The monster continued to say that after he became like this, he began to smell some kind of smell. It was a very appetizing aroma. Running away from the monster, the young man tried to hide, but he ran after him, telling him what a great smell he felt from the young man and that he really wanted to eat him. And starting his attack, the monster was hit by something heavy from Mai-hee, who appeared in time in front of Su Chang. The young man lying on the floor was very surprised to see the girl. She was scared to say that when she came out of the toilet she could not find the young man. The monster looked at the girl and thought about how brave she was. The monster started attacking the girl. The guy asked her to run away from here, because it was dangerous here, but he was at a sufficient distance from the girl to do something, and the monster was already next to her. At that time, the territory was already cordoned off on the street and no one was allowed to go inside the building, because an unknown person in the building staged terror with weapons. The girl was arguing with the policeman, because there were still people in the building. She told the policeman that she would go on her own if they did not take the necessary measures. At that moment, the young man shouted that there was a man upstairs. It was Mai-hee who fell out of the window of the building. The monster threw the girl out of the window, and the guy who did not have time to save her was terrified about what to do. How to save Mai-hee if he had never used wings and had never flown. Moreover, he saw a group of people standing below and could see his wings, then his life. His usual life would end. He apologized to the girl, mentally saying that he could not save her. But at the same moment, feelings and reaction took over, and our hero was already jumping after the girl. The monster that threw the girl out of the building believed that the young man could not survive, because an insect man, falling from such a height, would die, while thinking what a coward like this guy would do in such a situation. The young man looked in front of him, hugging the girl to him and thought that everyone would look at him now. He didn't know if he would lose his life now, but remembering Mai-hee, who said she was ready to help him, he decided that it was the right decision. And his wings burst out. Each person had something that he wanted to hide from others, and to tell about it was tantamount to showing his weakness. With these thoughts, our hero descended into the crowd of people photographing him. This is the story of a tough survival, a student who suddenly became weak after falling into the stone jungle of natural selection. There were wings in the very center of the city. Looking at all this, the girl said that she had previously wanted to break into the building, She was very surprised and she reported on the transmitter that, in her opinion, the young man did not need to be exterminated. He had to be taken to school like herself. Taking off her cap, she was looking at the guy, and a long mustache was sticking out of her head. Everyone was trying to figure out what had happened. Someone saw that the young man saved the girl who fell from the window of the building. All the cameras were pointed at the two of them at the moment when the young man descended with manhua from the sky. The monster realized that the young man was hiding his wings, and the strangest thing was that the young man was hovering in one place. Our hero was looking at manhua, who was on his hands and saw blood, but the girl did not answer him. She fainted. The monster was thinking about what the young man was capable of. Our hero was getting used to it, even though it was his first flight. The monster wanted to stop the young man, but realized that in front of him was the only creature capable of flying like that, and it was a dragonfly. The young man received dragonfly DNA by taking jungle juice. Su Chang flew over the city, wanting to find the nearest hospital, and the monster, looking after them and licking his lips, thought that he felt like he wanted to eat this dragonfly. The same girl was waiting for him from behind. After dealing with him, she asked if this monster knew what he had done. The girl recalled a previously uploaded video on YouTube, which was clearly not enough for the monster, so he also decided to arrange a performance in the city center. He probably really wanted to be caught. The girl, wearing a cap and hiding her mustache, looked at the monster that lay in front of her and told him that the world should not have known about their existence. At that moment, our hero flew to the hospital at full speed to save the girl who was unconscious. A month later, everyone was discussing the video that was uploaded to the internet. Su Chang's friends were also looking at what had happened. The incident in the cinemas interested everyone. Looking at the screen, she saw a guy with wings on his back, which very much resembled the wings of a dragonfly. Everyone wondered how a person could have such. Maybe he was a monster. And one of the students said that no matter how much he watched this video, the guy looked more like Su Chan. All the young men at this moment were looking at the naked hero, who was hiding in a hood. After all, on that day, news about what happened spread all over the internet, and, of course, they reached the university in a moment. The young man believed that then he would really be caught and sent for experiments. Many people treated this situation as a fiction. The news said that it might have been an event from the university. But all this was repeated again with our main character, and he remembered his childhood 12 years ago. Then all the children, sitting at the table, congratulated the child on his birthday. Everyone was happy and smiling. The little hero then stood aside, looking at how everyone was having fun. Then the teacher offered to call Su Chan, to which everyone was unhappy with the offer, because the children were not close to him and Su Chan never even brought gifts to anyone, one of the girls said. And everything was because the boy had neither money nor parents. In those days of his childhood, the boy also wanted to make friends with the others. But when you are very different from others, it is impossible to rejoice in such happiness, our hero believed. He did not understand why he was always different from others. Thinking about it, the young man was walking home, but then a guy crept up behind him and decided to lift up his raincoat. The young man immediately reacted and almost hit the guy on the head. He managed to dodge and say that he wanted to check if the young man had wings. The guy went towards his friends. They asked if he had checked the wings or not. He was almost sure that it was our hero who was on all the videos on the internet. The company started discussing this point. Su Chang didn't like that they looked at him like an animal in a zoo, and just a month ago they were friends. And the young man often went to university with them. And now that Su Chang, who was close to them, was no longer there, our hero was walking completely alone and everyone was looking at him with a disapproving look. Passing by and discussing him in a whisper, the young man felt lonely and thought that it would be better if he was passed for experiments. After getting on the bus, he decided to check his social networks, saw that many had unsubscribed. Then he remembered that there were rumors that the experimental laboratory was investigating the case of that monster on the video, and the young man would not want to be involved in this in any way. But he didn't care how many people turned away from him as long as he had manhua. The young man found out the news that manhua had regained consciousness this afternoon and decided to check on her. He just needed her. After coming to the hospital, manhua saw the young man. With a frightened look, tried to get out of bed and hide from him as far as possible, telling the young man not to approach her. Su Chang was annoyed and surprised by the girl's behavior and wanted to find out what happened. The girl tried to hide away from him, but the guy kept shouting at her. The nurses held the young man so that he would not approach the girl. Mai-he, who was so kind to our hero, who was worried about him, terrified, asked the young man not to approach her anymore, calling the young man a monster. The guy was put out the door of the ward, and he was so upset that when he came home he just decided to get rid of his wings. Picking up a pair of scissors and biting a towel, he decided that he would cut the wings. Only when he brought the scissors to the wings, he dropped them on the floor and began to cry sitting on the floor. He knew that it would hurt, but he could not hold back his tears, which had accumulated from all the insults and suffering. He thought he was so pathetic. A month later, the young man walked past random passers-by who were chatting merrily about life, thinking that a person lives in a group and, of course, there was someone who got out of this collective. Many of these people chose one end for themselves and the young man went to the roof of the building to ease his suffering, deciding that it would make him feel better. He jumped down, but then the wings saved him, which upset the young man very much, and then he saw a girl in front of him who spoke of envy for his wings, because she would like the same. The young man looked at the girl who was standing right in front of him. He did not know who she was or how long she had been standing here. More importantly, he didn't understand how she was standing on the wall. The girl continued to ask questions about the wings, asking why he decided to do it, having such wings, because it was very stupid. Taking off her cap and showing her true self, she told the young man that there was a way to become an ordinary person again. And the young man looked at her in surprise, considering whether there really was such a way to become a man again. Then he saw her mustache, she was the same as himself. Then the girl offered to go inside to talk, because she was very cold. Going inside, our hero began to ask how he could become a man again. A new acquaintance looked at him point blank, saying that she had a condition. She offered to go to her university for an interview. There will be a professor who will explain everything to the young man himself. Our hero looked dumbfounded at the girl, replaying in his head her words about the professor, and the interview to which he should go to get an answer to his question. The girl said that if the young man follows her, then they will take the bus that was waiting below to the university, where the young man will meet with the professor. The young man incredulously asked the girl why he had to believe her, because he had already been almost eaten by a mantis once. She suggested that he do what he had tried to do before, since he did not believe her. Looking at the young man, the girl explained to him that if he followed her and trusted her, then he would never be alone again. All the moments of his life, when he felt lonely every time, surfaced in the young man's head. And this phrase hooked the young man. Pursing his lips, he decided to take this step and agreed with the stranger, because he had nowhere else to go. After getting on the bus, the girl began to ask our hero, showing him the bottle, whether he knew this insect repellent that she had in her hands. He looked at the bottle in surprise and saw the very remedy that was called jungle juice. This is a tool that has mixed the DNA of an insect and a human. At one time, a new acquaintance of our hero told us this remedy was very popular because of its effect. But the problem was that if you kill an insect, its DNA will get into your body. It is for this reason that a part of the young man's body, the same as that of the mantis, became part of the insect. The young man tried to find out who invented this remedy by asking the girl a question. But she herself did not know, neither the name of the company was known, nor what kind of person invented this remedy. It was only known that a large number of people were infected from it. Having scored information on the internet, the young man could not find anything. The search query did not show results. The girl had one answer to this. She also looked into the phone and told the young man that nothing was known because people like her had covered their tracks. Our hero looked at her uncomprehendingly. Then the girl got up and said that they had arrived. When he got off the bus, he did not understand where his new companion had brought him, because they were still standing in the tunnel. The girl went to the dashboard that read information from her phone and asked the guy, while the doors were opening, if he knew where the tunnels were. The young man, of course, knew. The tunnels were in the mountains, and then the door opened in front of him, and a bright light shone in his face. His companion told him that people like her try to avoid people, so they live in hiding all the time. And the campus is located in Nesta, and a magnificent view of the city opened up before the young man. The young man walked and talked with surprise about the university that was inside the mountain, and then he saw people, and the whole picture looked like a real jungle with a variety of different species. The young man could not believe that there were so many like him. Could our hero really feel like an ordinary person in this place? From above, walking along the corridor in chains, led a monster that saw the very dragonfly that it tried to catch earlier. The guards did not allow him to stop, and then the discharge was applied. From that moment the mantis was just a guinea pig. But he only thought about the dragonfly, which he could meet again. Various insect people flew over the hero's head, But the young man continued to be surprised at this place. He looked around at the people around him and then guessed that everyone here was the same as him. The girl confirmed his guess that everyone here was just as affected by the jungle juice as he was. The weather was wonderful and everyone was sitting outside enjoying it and drinking various drinks. Someone was flying in the air, and someone was just sitting in a coffee shop like an ordinary person. Although the place was called a university, in fact it was only an opportunity to protect such people. The young man was surprised how many of them there were, and his companion confirmed earlier words that the young man would not be alone here. His new companion suggested that the young man take a walk while she reported to the department about him and returned back, because our hero was the only new student this semester. The young man stood in the middle of the road and watched a new acquaintance leaving, while the same insect people passed by around him and lived their normal lives. Deciding to explore the nest, the young man went for a walk. He could not have imagined that such a fantastic university could be located in Korea. There was a wonderful forest around him and there were people of all ages in it. Someone was swimming in the river, someone was sitting on a tree, and someone was flying. Everyone was so different. Passing by, the young man looked at people, because they all had insect parts, like himself, and the most important thing was that people did not hide it. Passing by, the young man saw a beetle in front of him, and then a man who was meditating under the arch. The man told the young man that he gave the beetles honey, and in return they provided him with protein. Such was the circle of life, and with these words the man covered with beetles took and ate the beetle. The guy was trying to figure out who this man was and wondered about himself. He realized that there were no normal people here, and as soon as he moved away from the man, he looked under his cloak trying to find out what kind of beetle the young man was. He saw wings like a dragonfly. He immediately flew away. The man who had previously eaten beetles managed to examine the wings of the young man and considered them flexible enough to hide them under clothes and not break. He praised the young man's wings, saying that they were in great shape. Our hero looked at the man in horror, and he tried to understand why the young man was trying to hide them. Remembering the frightened Manhwa, he informed the man that he had come here to get rid of his wings. The man considered him a pathetic fool. Entering the university building, the young man introduced himself to Professor Ma Du-hyun, about whom his new acquaintance told him. The man held out his hand to the young man and thanked the girl named Hee-jin for bringing this student here. The professor admitted that he had heard about the young man from reports. The guy stared at the professor with all his eyes and thought that he had a way to become a human again. Ma Du-hyun suggested that the young man get straight to the point. He decided to tell the young man how to become an ordinary person again. And to begin with, I suggested Su-chan to watch the video. The young man was surprised at how quickly events unfolded, while the professor included a video from the graduation of this university. The speech of the class representative was on the screen, and then the best graduate started the Cinderella ceremony. An insect man was standing on the stage and his head was completely from an insect. He was holding a drink in his hand, after which he was pierced by a means by launching a proboscis into the drink and his hands appeared. And then his head, there was a beautiful girl on the screen that transformed. The young man, looking at the screen, asked the professor what was the remedy that she drank. The professor explained to the young man that this is what the university's research department accidentally created by exploring the jungle juice. They used the basic principle of jungle sap and separated the insect DNA. Speaking in ordinary words, the professor explained that the medicine he held in his hand was able to return people to their normal human state. They called him Cinderella. On stage, the girl was crying, rejoicing in her appearance, and the guy was trying to realize what he had heard. The young man realized that it was the same medicine and asked the professor to give him the medicine, because it was what our hero needed. The professor hid the bottle behind his back and told the young man that he could not just give it to him. The young man was surprised by such a reaction. Then the professor explained to him that Cinderella was not a medicine that could be easily prepared. It was made from jungle juice concentrate, so the amount that could be cooked was limited. Unfortunately, it was impossible to return everyone to normal life. The young man began to get angry, looking at the professor who was telling him all this. But then he told the young man that if he wanted to return to normal life so much, then he needed to go to university and finish it with the best result in the department. In the video, a happy student waved to everyone and smiled. The professor explained that only the best students received Cinderella, and I asked our hero what he would choose. The young man looked at the professor and thought about how to get medicine. He had to go to this university and what kind of university it was. After he left the building, Hee-jin asked Su-chang what he would do. The young man replied that since the medicine was given only to the best student, then, in fact, he had no choice but to act. The girl replied to the young man that the choice was always his and if he did not want to enroll, He could just stay and live here. It was not bad here. Besides, even if he enters, it's not a fact that he will become the best student, Hee-jin said. The young man was glad that the question was not about money if it was only about learning. While taking out his case from his pocket, our hero said that everything was possible, and putting on the glasses that he had taken out earlier, said Su Chang, and even now he was ready to transfer to university. A few hours later, at the entrance to the lecture hall, the students were sitting in front of the university and discussing today, because today was the day of admission. They were discussing who would attend whose lectures this semester. Professor Ma's lectures, as always, were the most popular. One of the sitting students said that he failed his grades last semester. Then the girl replied that he needed to choose his professors more carefully. Our hero thought that he was transferred to this university very quickly, and this place was more like a university than the young man initially thought. He stood with the booklet and looked at what was happening around. All the insect people talked like university students, and the young man remembered Hee-jin, who helped him a lot. He remembered standing next to her and learning that enrollment was coming soon. He didn't even know which course to choose. The girl looked at him and said that he didn't even know what he was going to study and still talked about becoming the best student at the department. The young man panicked, and then she gave our hero a booklet where the main courses were painted. When enrolling, he had to choose one of the 3 that were described in the booklet. The guy looked at the booklet and thought about the courses, which of the 3 he had to choose. Looking at the names, he did not understand at all why they were so strange and thought that the girl had given him the wrong notebook. And he saw the name of the course, which sounded like the Principles of Nesta's Protection. It was the only good course in which more than half of the class were excellent students. The course was taught by Professor Ma, and the young man remembered a man who made a really good impression. After closing the booklet that Hee-jin had given him earlier, he firmly decided. The hero decided that he would apply for Professor Ma's course. However, if you think about it, then all applicants had to get together and pass the entrance exams. He recalled that usually students used a computer in a cafe, but maybe there were good computers at this university. Then his thoughts were interrupted by a girl who rushed past. Our hero looked to the side and saw a girl with a young man who clearly wanted to fight. The girl told the young man she was sitting on top of that she didn't want to see him at the university anymore. The young man did not understand how the students began to fight out of the blue. The young man lying on the ground asked the girl why she got into a fight with him. To come to the university and fight. Probably it was the hostages of the university, which the hero only heard about. But the person passing by said that the young man was not afraid, because he would often have to watch this. She grabbed the girl and the boy and separated them on different sides. But the hero remembered these antennas. The young man who was lying on the ground wanted to find out who threw him away. The girl said that to start a new semester with a fight, so the energy was going forward. In front of the young man was Hee-jin, representative of the Department of Insect Advantages Park Hee-jin. The young man, who was looking at his new acquaintance, only now found out about the title of the girl that she held at this university, and he realized that he was now in the same department with someone like Hee-jin. The girl waved her hand at him and asked him to go to the entrance exams. The guy began to worry about his student life. The time remaining before the entrance exams was 10 minutes, and our hero arrived on time. He sat down in the audience, taking his place at the computer. Almost everyone was already in their seats. A couple of guys were sitting behind him, who had fought on the street before, and our hero thought that his chance for an ordinary student life was already broken. But now it was the main thing for the young man to pass the entrance test. He was focused and looking at his computer. No matter how well someone grasps the material, if you allocate your time incorrectly or skip a good course, you will not be lucky in your studies. And our hero decided that no matter how, he had to get into Professor Ma's class. There was information about the professor's course on the screen. The professor stood and watched the city from his panoramic window. Then they came to him. In front of him was Professor Jai, a man of impressive size, full-time Professor Ji-John. He was asking the professor about a new student. The professor remembered about Su Chang's student and asked what Professor Jin thought about him, because he had already met him before, and whether the young man will be able to finish the entrance exam normally. The professor thought about it and remembered the scene in the forest, his first acquaintance with the young man, when he told him why he came to the university. Sighing, Jin informed Professor Ma that the guy had no chance. At that moment, our hero was looking at the computer screen and seeing the inscription exam begins. All the students rushed out the window. The young man did not understand where everyone ran. But only then did he realize that this was the entrance exam. It was necessary to think carefully and win. The only winners will be the strongest. Our hero, looking out the window, did not understand where everyone ran. At that moment, everyone was already flying, running using their abilities. The entrance exam has begun. The young man did not understand what was happening. There was another student in the class who asked the young man if he had transferred recently. The guy told our hero that he apparently did not have time to listen to the explanations for the exam. The young man turned to the student, who decided to explain to our hero if he didn't mind. The task of the exam is to find a professor. The guy went on to explain that in this university, unlike others, they had to find a professor who was hiding somewhere in the forest. Only after that the student could be enrolled in the class. The professor will give the first 16 students a flash drive, and only when this flash drive is delivered to the computer in the classroom, then the student will be accepted. The young men were walking through the forest. Su Chang realized that they didn't have time to chat, and then his new friend asked the young man whose course he would like to enroll in. Our hero replied that he would like to get into Professor Ma's course, because he had heard that he gives the best grades at the university, and the goal of our hero was to become the best student in the department. The young man looked at Su Chang and said that it would be difficult to achieve, but he was impressed by the guy's aspiration. And after saying goodbye to our hero, the guy went to look for the professor and wished good luck on the exam. The young man also thanked the guy for the information and said goodbye. In his heart, our hero thought he was a good kid. Standing on the hill, the young man reflected that a lot of time had already passed, and he had to find the professor, whether he was already late. He would at least like to know in which direction the others went. And I decided to walk around and see if he could look around from some hill, so our hero needed to find a hill. Then he remembered his wings and hung his cloak on a tree and soared into the air high above the trees. Now the young man saw everything and even saw where the other students were going. Then he noticed the flags and thought that maybe the flags marked the places where the students needed to go. If what the young man thought was true, then the professors should have been at these flags. After looking carefully, our hero saw that all the students were fighting among themselves because of Professor Ma's lectures. It seemed too much to the young man to go so far for the sake of lectures, and having decided that it was necessary to get away from there, the young man looked at the flags again. He was sure that the flags were the destination points. The only question left was which flag Professor Ma was near and whether it was worth relying on luck. But then he decided that he needed to go there and flew to the flag. Point was the one where the professor was sitting and drinking his tea while reading a book. Then he was surprised and saw the fallen student Su Chang in front of him. The young man thought that his landing was tough. At the speed that he was flying, it was impossible to fly with his eyes open. But his guess was correct. All the students were heading to point B, but the truth was that there was a great demand for a good professor, so the current to which the bulk of people were moving would be needed, so our hero thought. And his delay at the beginning of the exam helped to reveal the full advantage of the dragonfly's flight speed. The professor gave the student Su Chang a flash drive. This is a flash drive required for enrollment in the class. The young man barely managed it was the last flash drive, but he was happy. All that our hero had to do now was to return to the classroom and insert the USB stick into the computer. The professor wished him good luck and be careful. The young man began to rejoice that he passed the exam even too well and took his first step. The professor informed everyone that the principles of Nesta protection had already ended. The young man, rejoicing that he had received a flash drive, thought that this was his first step towards becoming an ordinary person. The professor was looking at his phone. Now that he had given away all the flash drives, it was time to start and he pressed the button. Then our hero received an SMS. There was a list in which there were photos. The young man did not understand at first what it meant. The word goals was indicated in the message and he saw his photo. Professor Jin was lying in a hammock, and when he saw the message, he looked that a new student who had received a flash drive was on the list. He should have understood by now, Professor Jin reasoned out loud. Jin also saw a notification that a new student had received Professor Ma's flash drive. And now, as all the notifications have been received, everything has started. The exam was not finished and the hunt began for the young man. The first attacker from whom our hero managed to dodge was a barbel beetle. He was strong enough to destroy a tree. The young man did not understand why everyone started a fight, but everyone wanted to get a flash drive. The next young man was attacked by a flagellated spider, which hunted using its hands, whips growing from its back. The young man was surprised that all the guys tried to kill him because of some flash drive. Everyone tried to catch the young man, who deftly ran away from his opponents. Now the young man understood what was meant by the goal when he saw his photo on the screen. Why was this entrance exam so terrible? Our hero reasoned, running away from another opponent. Then he was called. A voice called here, and the young man saw a student who helped him at the very beginning of the journey, telling him about the exam. The guy was sitting in a tree and waiting for the young man. Everyone was running in pursuit of our hero. Hiding in a tree, the young man said that everyone had left. Our hero, trying to catch his breath, thanked the young man for helping him, calling the guy very kind. The young man, scratching his forehead, said that what Su Chang was telling him was unheard of nonsense and paralyzed our hero in the forehead with his claw. Su Chang stops obeying his body, and he falls to his knees. Unable to move, the young man unclenches his hand and takes the flash drive, explaining in parallel to the hero that it was the poison of a honey bee, a bee capable of secreting a small amount of strong poison, paralyzing the enemy's body. For some time, our hero, according to his opponent, will not be able to move. Standing in front of Su Chang, the young man himself did not believe that he now had Professor Ma's flash drive. It was really profitable to pretend to be a good man. Our hero looked in horror at the young man, and he asked the guy if he really thought that the bee was going to help him, because everyone here was rivals and no one would help their opponent, forcing students to fight so that only the strongest remain in the end. Didn't the young man know that this is the essence of the entrance exam? The bee asked him. Our hero looked at him with a trembling look. The young man, taking the flash drive from the hero, said that he would make sure that it would serve him well, and wished our hero to try harder next year, although he believed that he would never become a better student. With these words he flew away. The hero thought that he would not become the best if the guy eventually steals his flash drive and pulling the claw out of his forehead. He decided that he must definitely get his flash drive back, otherwise he would not become the best student and not turn back into a person. With these thoughts he chased the guy, teasing him. He flew away from the young man, saying that if he tried so hard, the poison would spread faster. The young man with all his heart wanted to catch up with his opponent, reaching out to him with his hand. Then his eyes lit up like a dragonfly with a bright green light, and he began to see the movements of the bee and predict where he would be. The dragonfly, called the queen of the hunt, has a 95% success rate, and the secret of this success lies in her eyes. Having a faceted structure, dragonfly eyes are made up of thousands of individual eyes. These 1,000 eyes are able to catch the slightest movements within a radius of 360 degrees. Thanks to their amazing eyes, dragonflies read the movements of the victim and predict its trajectory during the hunt. The moment Su Chang thought, "I want to catch up with him," this young man became a victim. Not expecting that our hero would chase him, the guy got scared and got hit by a young man. 1,000 dragonfly eyes will never lose sight of a victim. Inserting a USB flash drive on the computer, the inscription "enrollment in the class is completed" appeared. Jin exhaled. She was done and she was still wondering how much time was left before the end of the exam. Then a young man turned to her, who had been fighting with a girl in the morning, and decided to ask the representative of the department what was wrong with the guy she brought, whether everything would be fine with him. After all, she understood that there were many people who wanted to get into Professor Ma's course. Besides, if you don't meet the deadline, you automatically fail the entrance exam. Jin thought about the young man. If he really is going to become the best student in the department, then the young man will have to protect the flash drive at the cost of his life. The flash drive at the moment of impact fell out of the hands of the young men who were fighting in the air, and our hero tried to catch it. Almost reaching for the flash drive, suddenly another hand grabbed it. The girl who grabbed the flash drive thanked our hero for the gift, and with the words that the flash drive was useful to her flew away from the guy. He wanted to fly after her in bewilderment, but realized that something was wrong with the bee. Looking at the young man, our hero did not understand why he still continued to fall, because he could have crashed by falling from such a height. In all likelihood, the bee guy passed out with a single blow that our hero inflicted on him. The young man, looking in the direction of the fleeing girl, understood that he could miss his flash drive, but his thoughts were busy with the falling guy. It was not the hero's fault that the young man brought this upon himself. But saving the guy, Su Chang could not pretend that he did not see anything, as a man, and our hero flew after the girl with his flash drive. Leaving the young man on the tree, he did not realize that he had missed the thief. He was finished. Flying through the air with dizziness, the young man thought about what he should do. He had to find another flash drive. And then he fell right into a tree, and then to the ground. His body did not obey him, and perhaps it was because of the poison. He hoped that he would not die, but to come to this because of the entrance exams. Then his thoughts got confused and he blacked out. When he regained consciousness, he heard a familiar voice. Professor Jin was standing and eating something next to the guy, calling the picture a pathetic sight. The professor told the young man to get up. He stood up in horror, thinking only about how long he had been unconscious. In front of him was that recent guy whom the young man remembered from the forest. Leaving this guy said that it was time for the young man to go. The entrance exam was over. The young man sat on the ground in complete disappointment. But then the man said that there were still 5 minutes left, but there shouldn't have been a single flash drive left. Sadly, the young man will have to postpone his goal until next year, although there was no guarantee that Cinderella would not end by that time. Here our hero asked the man to stop, saying that he was attacked surreptitiously, and the flash drive was taken away, and then he lost consciousness because of the poison. Weren't all these moments cheating? Calling the young man pathetic, the professor asked if there was anything in his head besides sawdust. He thought that the teachers should have made an exception for the young man and allowed him to retake. In this university, the most important thing was to be strong. If a young man had a goal, then he should fight for it until victory. The professor also explained that all the teachers monitored the process and stopped everything that could threaten the lives of students. Jungle sap turns people into weapons, poison, horns, when insects and claws are full of dangers. Could the young man really think that in an institute full of dangerous people he would be asked to read books in class here? If the young man wanted to read books, then he had to go to the Nesta Civil Protection Center. After all, if he stays there, he will be able to live quietly and peacefully, the life of a bug man. Then the professor threw the young man a candy wrapper from the cookies that he had eaten earlier, and asked the young man hanging around to throw away on the way. The professor asked the young man to take care of the planet, and not forget to sort the garbage. The young man stood in the middle of the forest and thought that maybe everything was over for him. As a result, he did not go anywhere, remembering the situation with the young man, whom he could then leave to die. Then perhaps he could pass. The young man reproached himself for sitting here in the forest and thinking about such things. He considered himself a real trash, but then he remembered the professor's words about sorting garbage and decided to unwrap the wrapper that Jin had given him. The young man was so upset because he did not enroll, and the professor still gave him such tasks. Unwrapping the wrapper, he saw the treasured flash drive. And then I remembered the words of the teacher about the remaining 5 minutes. It was getting dark, and Professor Ma met Professor Geo. He did not believe that the professor could give the flash drive just like that, because it seemed to him that student Su Chang annoyed him. But maybe Professor Geo had a good reason. At that moment the professor recalled how the young man saved a falling bee guy, and Ma replied that he had chosen Su Chang as a whipping boy. Our hero at that time was trying his best to get to the office. He had almost no time left, and at such a speed he was only losing it. His eyes hurt from the air, but if he closed them, he would not be able to land normally, so he could not fly faster. But then he stopped and remembered about his glasses. Thanks to them, dust and wind will get into his eyes less. He was able to increase the speed. In the forest, the young man sat and reasoned that he did not understand why everyone was rushing through the forest. If it was possible to take away the flash drive right in front of the university and quickly enroll, the guys who were next to him supported their partner in their thoughts. Then the team saw the guy right ahead. All their waiting finally paid off, and as soon as they rushed after the young man, as he, having overtaken them, flew on. The company tried to understand why the young man was so fast. They decided to run to the audience and take away the flash drive there. The girl running next to him told her partner that it was already against the rules. The young man that caught up with them reported that he was fine. I knew about these rules. Having fallen, the guy could not understand who tripped him, and other students were standing in front of him, who decided to remind the young man that fights in buildings were prohibited. Behind the guys was Jin, who after completing the exam received a text message from Professor Jai, who asked to help the newcomer. She was a little puzzled, because the professor was not one of those who said such things. She did not know what the young man had done. But it was not bad for a new student. At that moment, our hero flew into the classroom and managed to insert a USB flash drive into the computer. Enrollment in the class was completed. Sitting on a chair near the computer and trying to catch his breath, he decided that he was lucky because he managed to finish the exam. It wasn't Professor Ma's class, but the young man didn't have time to be picky right now. If the young man tries harder than the others, he will still be able to claim the title of the best student. Then he received an alert. Our hero was standing in the classroom and looking at his computer. After completing the entrance exam and receiving notification of the imminent start of the course, he went to the main auditorium. This day was too long for Su Chang. Approaching the audience, he was taken out by 2 guards. They informed the young man that only students and professors of Nest could enter. Then our hero said that he was studying at this university. The guards asked the young man to show his student ID if he studied here. The young man looked at them in bewilderment, not understanding where he had to get a student ID. Then Jin came up and showed the guards his student ID, informing the young man that he had just been given it. The girl gave it to Su Chang. The guys were walking down the corridor, and the young man was interested in whether his new girlfriend was going to the same lecture as him. She replied that these lectures were more suitable for her body, although Professor Ma's lectures would be more suitable for the young man. She asked the guy not to get upset too much. Now it can be very difficult to get into the list of the best. But the young man believed that it was possible to become the best student on the stream of a harsh teacher. He told Hee-jin that he wasn't going to give up yet. The young man was looking at his student, and Hee-jin praised his attitude. She didn't think that the new guy was a brave guy. They reached the lecture hall. Everyone was looking at our hero. After all, in front of them was the same guy Dragonfly from the cinema. Everyone was surprised that they were on the same stream. Then he was bombarded with phrases about the cinema and that the guys seemed to have seen a celebrity. The young man was surprised. One of the students slammed his fist on the table and asked what nonsense his classmates were talking about celebrities. He asked the young man why he spread his wings so brazenly in front of a crowd of people. Was he completely out of his mind? Su Chang was surprised at the young man, remembering him fighting in front of the university in the morning. The guy started asking our hero if he was aware of what he and the representatives of the department had been going through while rocking public opinion for a whole month, and what it cost them just not to let the scientists from the government grab him. The young man looked at the speaker in surprise and after his words realized why everything had calmed down so quickly. These guys protected him. Hee-jin asked the young man not to pay attention to the chattering guy, telling Su Chan that he did what he did in order to save the girl who fell out of the window, and everyone understood it. The disciples, beaming with joy, smiled at the young man. Hee-jin said that if she were in his place, she would have done the same and told the young man that he could be proud of himself, which embarrassed the guy a little. Our hero heard the girl's name for the first time and thought about the state she was in because of him, and after all she had suffered, she could say such words. She was too kind to him. The girl, leaving the classroom, said goodbye, because she had a small task from the professor. A student watched him from the back desks, who was very amused by all this. The bully who fought with the girl in the morning said that Hee-jin was so kind only for the reason that the young man was new. Then the student, who had been watching everything from the end of the class, asked the chatterer to shut up, having dealt with him with a blow on the table. After greeting his classmates, he stretched and said that he was glad to meet everyone and wanted to say something to everyone when they gathered. Then he wouldn't have to sit for so long. He turned to the guys with a request, and meanwhile his whole gang came into the classroom and the student asked to give him the name of the best student. All the guys were unhappy with his request, because it was not so easy. The young man reported that he really wanted the medicine Cinderella, or as it was correctly called. He did not remember. He was not interested in the details and the guys just needed to help him. In one case, he decided to confiscate the students' books for this semester. Then it turns out that the young man went to all the lectures alone. The gang of this student was prowling around the entire auditorium and took away students' cards from everyone, without which students could not attend the auditorium and go to lectures. Our hero could not believe his eyes and went on the attack, because he was not going to give up his student. The guy who also wanted to become the best student was not interested in anyone. Seeing a flying bug that flew straight to him like a baseball, he knocked out the student. The young man woke up already in the infirmary, in a bed with a bandaged head. He did not understand at first where he was. Not far from the bed was a table where Hee-jin was working. She explained to the young man that, having finished with her business, she returned to the classroom, and then found two unconscious and wounded, so she brought them to the medical center. The young man, remembering about the student ID and not finding it on his neck, realized that these hooligans had taken it from him. The girl also informed the young man that it was possible to easily get a new student. The young man decided that he seemed to be worried about a trifle. Hee-jin asked him to stay at the medical center while she received new student cards. Promising that she would return soon, she asked the young man to rest. The young man agreed with the girl and thought to himself that Hee-jin definitely deserved to be a representative of the department. She was so kind and caring. Then he remembered Mai-hee, who at first glance was the same, good and caring. His neighbor woke up. The young man was surprised that he was alive. Saying that the guy would not wait for his death, he asked what happened. Our hero told us what happened, and the young man was horrified to learn that their student tickets were taken by hooligans. But Su Chang immediately informed the young man not to worry, because the representative of the department went to get new ones for them. Then his story was interrupted by a guy and asked if the young man really believed it. If there was a goal to become the best student, then why bother the others to go to lectures? The young man of our hero asked to think. They could only stop those who really represented the competition, and whether, in his opinion, many students could be released in a day. A friend of our hero asked. Then the young man realized. Hee-jin went to select the students on her own, saving the guys. When she came to the lake, the girl asked the hooligans, just in case, if they just intended to return her students. One of the hooligans was laughing, and the second just asked if she had seen at least someone return something after such words. The girl was surrounded by a crowd of hooligans. Everything went according to the student's plan. He did not plan to take the students' other students. In fact, he needed a girl, because he knew that she would try to return the students' other guys. And from the very beginning I planned to lure her to this very territory next to the pond. The best student of the first semester, Park Hee-jin, was in front of him and began to deal with the rest of the students. Then the guys attacked her with attacks, but they did not understand that it was impossible to cope with it on Earth. Removing the students from the neck, the guy called the representative of the department and said that he was throwing them into the water. The girl stopped and looked in his direction. Then she rushed to the student and fell into a trap. She entered the territory of the floating. It was the strongest predator of the aquatic insect environment, and he wanted to deal with the girl. Surfacing from the water to get air, the swimmer attacked the girl again, believing that it would be easier to become a better student without her. The girl continued to fight with the guy, but if he tried to deal with her on the university grounds, it would cause too much suspicion. She realized that she had fallen into his trap. If she drowns, then no one will understand anything. The bully decided and therefore lured her to the territory of the pond. The rest of the hooligans asked the guy to stretch the pleasure. They still ached in those places that the girl attacked. They offered options for what could be done with the girl before her death, and then something flew by the water very quickly that no one understood what it was. Everyone stood and stared with all their eyes. After surfacing and gulping air, Hee-jin looked in the direction of the savior, which said that no matter how much someone wanted to become a better student, didn't he have to choose human methods at the same time? He attacked the bully and held him by the breasts. The same looked at the young man. The hooligans were surprised that some guy came to the rescue. After they got a better look at the picture, in front of them was the same flying guy from the class. The young man was in the water and was holding a bully, and far away from them, Hee-jin was trying to recover. The swimmer asked the guy how he could stand on his feet after his blow. It surprised the bully, and he tried to hit the young man, but our hero saw and predicted his movements, just like last time. Faceted eyes worked, and the young man noticed that the opponent's movements were not so fast. He decided that he could defeat an opponent of this level. Hee-jin, knowing this bully and seeing what he could do, shouted at the young man to leave, because the floater started the attack. He tried to attack the young man from behind, but he managed to dodge. Flying away from the opponent, the young man asked the girl why she was trying to help him, because he was doing everything. Then Hee-jin, looking at the young man, explained to him that the floater was not equal to the rest, especially since they were not in the most advantageous position in this territory. The beetle inside the bully is a floater that lives in the water. It was worth the beetle to grab the hero and drag him under the water. That's it. The end. They needed to leave faster. Then the enemy took student tickets out of the water, which our friends had completely forgotten about. And the bully suggested that they run away if the guys wanted to. The whole gang stood around their leader. The young man was indignant because the enemy was outnumbered, and besides, the enemy wanted to fight where it was more convenient for him. Hee-jin understood everything and asked the young man to leave. He shouldn't have gotten into a fight. He had better get out of here. The young man did not understand the girl. Then she explained to him that their goal was she was the best student of the first semester. If they get what they want, they will surely return the student loans to the owners, the girl said. The girl believed that from the very beginning it was only her problem, which the guys accidentally got into. So without finishing, our hero said that he refused to leave. Su Chang was telling the girl that she shouldn't have thought that way. When he first came to the university, the girl promised him that he would not be alone. Everything was exactly like that, and the guy explained that he had not come alone. Another young man appeared behind the hooligans. He dealt with 2 hooligans and said about the rest. The young man was here to return his student. There was a locust in front of us. It uses strong legs from which thorns grow to hunt its victims. Seeing the young man, the leader realized that Locust Cha Hai-sun had already recovered. This guy was also a thorn for the bully, and therefore, after the representative of the department, he wanted to deal with him. While he was chatting, our hero tried to attack and take away the student ID that the opponent was holding. But he expected such an outcome, so the young man's attack was unsuccessful, and the bully again began to attack the young man, calling his attack a mistake and the fact that he approached him. But looking at his opponent, the young man hinted that it was not a mistake at all. All he needed was just not to get hit, and our hero attacked the enemy from different sides. The bully realized that the young man was now moving not just in a straight line as before, but he had room for maneuver. And the bully tried to understand, even with all these data, how the young man managed to fly like that, what kind of beetle he was. The young man flew to the enemy with all his might and thought that if he used the speed and put all the kinetic force into the blow, then the difference between the opponents in strength would not be important, and attacking with all his strength, the floater flew away from the young man. But because of the water, the damage was reduced by half and the attack was not so powerful as our hero hoped. The bully decided to cheat and deceive our guys. He invited them to stop and asked about the reason they had for the fight, saying that it was possible to solve everything with words and offered to be honest with each other. While the bully looked in the direction of Hee-jin, who was standing not far from him. Then the villain began to ask the guys that they also wanted to become the best students in order to get Cinderella, whether his judgments were correct. At that moment Hai-sun dealt with other hooligans. The leader continued to talk about competitors, which could become less and everyone would benefit from it. And while he was talking about our heroes, one of the gang emerged from the water behind Hee-jin and grabbed the girl. But she deftly attacked the enemy and was free. The gang leader was already standing behind her and wanted to get rid of the girl. At that moment, Su Chang flew up from above to the unsuspecting swimmer and grabbed him by the limbs, lifting him into the air. Now the villain was no longer in the water and this was not his territory. Our hero, who grabbed the bully by the limbs, threw him back to his possessions. The young man did not care how much he wanted Cinderella. His methods were inhuman, and with these words he took the student tickets. Su Chang explained to the defeated floater that there was no point in becoming a man if he didn't even deserve to be called a beetle after all that he had done and was still ready to do. The young man stayed in the air and held his catch, so they successfully returned their students. Hee-jin looked with delight and surprise towards the young man. When they came to the auditorium, the introductory lecture was already over. The guys returned all the students' classmates, but decided to keep secret the fact that it was their merit. In fact, Hee-jin asked not to tell anyone, because she was worried that everything happened through her fault. The girl begged so much that it was difficult to refuse her. The young man never got to the first lecture and let him not become a hero who returned student tickets, but he had a new home. Standing on the boxes, he inspected his new home, which he now had on the university grounds. He opened the box and saw the shape of the pulpit. He liked it very much. Now that our hero is far from his former home and entered the university, the student dormitory no longer seemed like something bad. But then someone's voice called him and Hai-sung was telling the guy that the young man had performed well on the battlefield. Now the two of them were roommates. Our hero didn't know whether to be happy about it or not, because the guy was scaring him. Sitting on the floor and hugging our hero, Hyun-soo asked if the young man was drinking, to which he replied that just like everyone else, and in his head he was thinking that this guy wanted to drink with him alone. Only with him. But then the door opened and two girls came in. Hee-jin with snacks, who talked about a spacious room, and a girl with whom locusts had fought earlier in the morning. She had a large crate of beer in her hands. The young man was confused, and Hee-jin apologized for coming without warning. They wanted to celebrate the beginning of the semester today. It just happened that she and Hai-sung would live in the same room, and she offered our hero a drink with everyone for company. Perhaps the whole point was that the young man had not been drinking for a long time. But after he got to this strange university, after he discovered his wings, he thought about it sitting on the floor of his new dorm room and having fun with his new friends. The young man became very easy. Somewhere in the woods outside of Nast, the bully was floating and reporting to someone who asked about Professor Hee-jin's student, whom he could not figure out. But he immediately relented and said that his main goal was to attract attention. He should have understood that. A beetle girl with a beetle head with red eyes was sitting on a tree, and told the floater that those who could not cope with the hunt were eliminated. The bully prayed that he would do better next time and would definitely get Cinderella. But the girl didn't need anything like that, and having descended from her tree on which she was sitting, she dealt with the bully in an instant. Since he could not cope with some newcomer, even being so strong, he should have been ashamed. But there was no need to worry. Lifting the beetle's head, the girl said, the head would be pleased, because they found what you were looking for. The next day, in the audience of the Department of the Advantages of Insects, the guys sat all and discussed each their own. Today was the first lecture on the main subject, practical fight against bugs. Our hero sat and humbly waited for what they would be taught. He was insanely nervous. Hee-jin sat down with him and asked the young man not to be nervous. Today is the first lecture and they said that there would be only a simple test. She tried to calm him down by saying that nothing complicated should be. The young man did not know much, but she wanted to help him. He decided to take it in his hands and calm down. Then the teacher entered the classroom, the same one our hero had already seen earlier. He was talking about a simple test that was discussed yesterday. The results of this test will affect the students' grades and including the chainsaw. He asked to take everything into account that they could die. The young man looked at everything that was happening in shock. Outside of Nest there was a training ground where all the students were. Our hero was running away from a teacher with a chainsaw, not understanding what was happening at all. Where did this teacher come from at all and why was he chasing after everyone trying to finish them off? Hae-sun ran next to our hero and told him that it was the curator, Professor Jae-jeon. The young man was horrified to hear that it was a professor. Hee-jin was running nearby, explaining that the practical fight against bugs meant using the acquired abilities in battle. The role of the students of this department was to fight with guys like that Mantis, who had already met our hero earlier. The young man remembered that guy in horror. The teacher stood behind the guys and explained to them that it was at the introductory lecture, but they did not appear at it. The power of insects is a weapon and there will be those who use it to harm. That's why students had to learn how to fight. That's why Nest has to find all the insect people and protect them. The teacher reminded that only the strongest will survive. If they wanted Cinderella, they had to move. The first test is a game of hide and seek. It was necessary to use all their insect powers and run away from it. Those whom the teacher catches will fly out at the same second and they will not be able to become the best students. Everyone was horrified to hear this and were surprised. And the test was starting right now, John was saying, wielding his chainsaw, which our heroes were dodging. It was crazy for the young man, but if Jae-jeon said that they should learn to fight, then why he told them to run away was a mystery to him. After all, when our hero met that Mantis, all he could do was run away. Hae-sun dodging the old man's punches didn't understand how he could be so fast. Then he was almost hit, but Su Chang managed to pull his friend away from the saw in time. Then the teacher noticed the faceted eyes of the dragonfly and realized that the young man had read the movements of the chainsaw. For the guy who claimed that he had come here to get rid of the wings, he himself was a painfully good ace, as if he had turned into a real dragonfly. With these words he divided our heroes with his saw. Calling him a monster, the young man immediately remembered the frightened Himai, who huddled in a corner at the sight of him and stood up as a stopper. The teacher ordered him to look both ways and reaching for Su Chang's head shouted that he was running away. Then Hee-jin came to his aid. The girl looked at the guy and said that he would not give up if he was caught. It was necessary to get ready. While Su Chang and Hee-jin were standing aside, Hae-sun decided to attack the professor and invited him to rest with a clay mask and at these words threw clay in his face from under his feet. The same one believed that throwing dirt at the senior meant that they did not respect the professor, but it was a smoke screen. The smoke screen was so strong that the teacher could not see anything. Our heroes, meanwhile, were running away until they were seen through the smoke screen by this old man, who, according to Hae-sun, was some kind of energizer. In the end, he himself told them to run away, and the guys ran, having come up with a detour maneuver with mud. The Nesta underground isolation ward, the corridor of the isolation ward along which the woman was walking. Those who resisted lay under her feet. She found the Mantis that was chained up and asked if he was alive, because how could they do this to someone who was still alive? The girl was looking at the Mantis through the bars, and using a student ID, she tried to open the cage, but, unfortunately, it was impossible to bypass the security system with them. Therefore, the girl prepared something and her assistant was already hurrying to her. It was a bee guy who stole the security card from the professor's office. Now there were lectures, so the young man was not caught. The girl hugged the boy and told him how nice it was on his part. The university forced him to retire and it was such a cruel place. The young man melted under her words. Then, in his arms, he thought about why he stole the professor's thing. Why for this woman he didn't know, and when he got here, the bee guy had a lot of questions. The red dot on his neck was throbbing at that moment. The girl took the pass and asked not to worry about trifles while she opened the doors. It was better for the young man to say hello. There was a Mantis in front of them, who came out of the cage and saw insect people. And then he smelled a wonderful smell. The beetle girl hugged the bee guy, who was terrified of the Mantis and said that everything was as the head said. The Mantis behaved just like an insect. And she threw the young bee right into the arms of the Mantis. It was a gift from her. The Mantis, looking at the young man, understood that this was his food. And while the mantis was finishing the food, the girl looked at this sight. Meanwhile, outside the nest, our hero was standing and trying to catch his breath. It's been an hour and a half of the lecture they just ran. The guys nearby stretched and thought about how they barely managed to escape, while the young man was outraged by the test. While they were running away from the teacher, most of the classmates were caught. Our hero was interested in whether all the guys who were caught would fly out. Most likely it was so. Professor Jai always kept his word. At that moment, he was hanging all the students upside down to a tree. The young man thought about how this teacher instills discipline. It was not for nothing that he felt something was wrong at the first meeting. This professor seemed abnormal to him. And sitting down on the ground, the young man regretted that he did not get into Professor Ma's course. Jin tried to reassure the young man that the couple would end in an hour and he needed to be patient a little more. The young man asked Jin if the professor was going to fail everyone, to which the girl replied that he had such a teaching method. Then Hai-sun asked them to be quiet. The professor was already very close and other students were running away in front of him, stumbling and falling. The girl pulled her ankle, and her friend informed the professor that her friend. But without finishing, the professor was already looking at them and suggesting that they run. It didn't matter if her leg was dislocated or broken. The girl had to run. The professor began to attack the girls, but then our hero stopped him, holding the professor's hand with a chainsaw. He looked at the young man in bewilderment, who shouted to him that it was already too much and that the professor was overdoing it. Friends who were sitting in ambush were shocked by what their partner was doing. Besides, today was only the first day. The young man asked the professor if he had gone too far, to which the professor replied that it was true. Really, this couple of girls would already be dead. And he reminded the young man about the mantis. Was our hero going to lecture him the same way? And the professor was not joking when he said that all those caught by him would fly out of here. There was about an hour left until the end of the lecture, and the teacher offered them a game. If they could hit him at least one blow before the end of the hour, then he would not only for a couple. He would generally close his eyes to all today's failures as if nothing had happened. However, if they can't, then the main character and his friends will fly out of here. The professor believed that the novice was not the time to think about others. He still had a long way to go. He needed to understand his strength. Maybe the young man came here to get rid of the dragonfly's powers, but if that happened, he could not survive without the power. At this moment, the girl was leading the mantis through the forest, and he was rushing from side to side. He felt a very familiar smell. He smelled very tasty, and the mantis was going crazy from this smell. I think it was the smell of that dragonfly. This story begins with a very ambiguous and difficult situation. It all started with the fact that the main character of this story, the Crown Prince of the Wu region, Wu Yu, was drugged with banned substances, and he was also badly framed right on the eve of the hero's ascension to the throne. After a terrible incident, the main character wakes up before he has fully realized the gravity of the situation. The Crown Prince of the Wu region, Wu Yu, has a splitting headache. He thinks that he probably just fell asleep yesterday. He also remembered that the hero's coronation should take place tomorrow. It turns out that the Crown Prince of the Wu region, Wu Yu, was also accused of prohibited acts that were committed on one of the imperial concubines. This girl is named Meng. Now she is confused and does not know at all how to behave in front of the main character, because Meng was clearly against this connection. The Crown Prince of the Wu region, Wu Yu, and millions of other people were dealt an insidious and malicious stab in the back. A trial is held over the main characters, at which the ministers decide that the submissive Emperor Yuan Zai was very incompetent, and therefore Yuan Zai can definitely be considered guilty of the atrocities committed by him. And his wife Meng definitely shouldn't be blamed for this whole thing. It's all Wu Yu, who definitely doesn't have any sense of shame. Meng tries to object something, but the girl is not allowed to say a single word. One of the subordinates just roughly drags Meng out of the main hall. Also, other important people in the Wu region, Wu Yu, are shouting at the top of their voices that the hero is definitely not worthy of being the one who should soon become the Emperor of Wu. What is happening is that yesterday's Crown Prince, who had respect, status, and loyal subordinates, today is no longer the Crown Prince, but a prisoner whose actions are condemned by people. No one honors the hero anymore and does not look up to him. Everything is definitely lost. The Crown Prince of the Wu region, Wu Yu, is already imprisoned in a cage for criminals. Now he is outside in winter. He is wearing light clothes, so the Crown Prince is very cold, because snow is falling on him. There are bruises on his hands from wearing handcuffs for a long time. All the legs of the Crown Prince are covered in bloody abrasions, and disappointment and pain are on his face. Is the hero really going to die here? All these 10 years of cultivation have passed like one big day. The Crown Prince of Wu region, Wu Yu would like to get another chance and correct his fate. The hero hopes that there is still justice in the world. And if the hero had a chance to be reborn, then all the offenders of the Crown Prince would be somewhere beyond redemption. After much thought, the hero falls exhausted on the wooden floor of the cage. He had obviously lost the creature because of the cold around him. Death and rebirth. This would literally mean victory over the powerful and monstrous forces of the Buddha. The Crown Prince of the Wu region, Wu Yu has special techniques that can help him change his fate for the better, where he will be able to change everything in the future. And the first stage of one of the techniques is the Vajra of the invincible body. After all, the entrance to immortality takes place with the help of the gate, and the invincible Vajra body technique. This is power as well as control over the immortal path of gods and demons. The Crown Prince of the Wu region, Wu Yu is also a great sage who is equal to heaven, and he himself is from the heavenly palace of the immortal kingdom, who directly defeated the Buddha from the heavenly kingdom of Buddha. The chronicles of the heavenly devourer, heavenly rules and commandments, and all the demons and gods are also at the disposal of the hero. The action takes place in the kingdom of Wu. There is a real commotion going on in the kingdom. No one understands how Wu Yu, the Crown Prince, could commit such an audacious and very dishonorable act. Due to the terrible actions of the hero, the reputation of the Wu kingdom, Wu Yu was questioned from the outside and was further destroyed by Wu Yu's actions. It is also reported that if the former emperor of the kingdom were alive, he would definitely be furious with all this. Meanwhile, the Crown Prince of the Wu kingdom, Wu Yu, is trying to recover. His head is splitting badly, and probably the dream he remembered now that his coronation will take place tomorrow, and then Wu Yu just went to sleep. They turn to Wu Yu again, because it's not clear how many times he needs to repeat what kind of mean and heartless mistake he made. Wu Yu opens his eyes and sees in front of him, it seems, a very familiar girl. It's concubine Meng. After all, this is one of Wu Yu's father's favorite concubines, but now the hero is not in a condition to take and remember her name. Wu Yu still has a splitting headache. Here the hero abruptly realizes that something is completely wrong. Why did concubine Meng appear so abruptly and suspiciously in Wu Yu's bed, just the day before his coronation? Here the mistress of the entire harem, the 11th concubine herself, once again turns to Wu Yu. She orders her subordinates to pour water on the hero so that he finally comes to his senses and realizes what he has done. After a bucket of water is poured on the hero, 11 the concubine asks the hero if he really has finally woken up. After the cold and encouraging water that turned out to be on the hero, he understands that this is all that is happening now. That is not a dream. Everything really happens in reality. Wu Yu also notices that bright phoenixes are carved on the bed on which he is now lying, which means that this is definitely not Wu Yu's bed. Wu Yu immediately recognizes this place. This place is the former Harmony Hall, where the former emperor of the Wu kingdom rested with his concubines. Wu Yu also does not understand why there are so many ministers in the Harmony Hall now, because they have always been forbidden to enter this hall. Concubine Meng, who has also been on the bed next to Wu Yu all this time, realizes that something terrible is about to happen, so he does not want it to continue. Then, when the concubine continues to be angry at the concubine of Meng and Wu Yu, she immediately asks to take this vial and dissolute couple away from here. Immediately, the subordinates of the 11 concubines throw Wu Yu and concubine Meng off the bed of the former emperor and forcibly lead them to another hall without delay. This is the Hall of the 20 Palace, the Kingdom of Wu. Right now, the other ministers of the Wu Kingdom are whispering about Crown Prince Wu Yu. They don't understand how the Crown Prince could do this. He's still too young and inexperienced. What a shame this is. The ministers went into full condemnation of Wu Yu's actions. 11 concubine sits on the throne hall of the 20 Palace. She can no longer bring out concubine Meng, so she orders the servants to come and take this shameless concubine Meng outside the hall gates. And for her rash and unjustified actions, concubine Meng should be executed immediately. Meng is in shock. She is trying to justify herself as best she can. She tells the 11th concubine that she is not at all guilty of this. She also does not know how it all happened. Meng also says that she is not to blame. The concubine is ready to swear 11 to the concubine. The head of the harem does not agree with this. She says that the already deceased Emperor Yuanzai was a very incompetent person, and therefore Yuanzai was to blame. But then one of the ministers who came to the 20 hall says that concubine Meng should not be executed in any case, because only Wu Yu is to blame, who does not have any sense of shame. Other emperors also agree with this opinion. Wu Yu is definitely not worthy of being the crown prince of the Wu kingdom. He is not worthy of being the Eastern Wu Emperor. Then the 11th concubine directly addresses Wu Yu. She mentions to the hero that the former Emperor Yuanzai has only recently died, and his heir is already guilty of having been seen cheating with concubine Meng from the harem. Then Wu Yu is completely at a loss. Did he have some kind of connection with one of the concubines last night? He asks the ministers around him about it out loud. Wu Yu never fully realized the whole situation. Wu Yu is now thinking that he doesn't even know the name of this concubine. Then how could he just go to bed with this girl? Wu Yu has been sitting on the floor all this time, and when he tries to get to his feet, but then Wu Yu realizes that all his muscles are very weak, so he can't get up in any way. Wu Yu concludes that someone, most likely, someone took and poisoned the hero. Then one of the ministers who stands behind the hero says that he personally warned everyone earlier, and that Wu Yu shows negativity, ruthlessness, cruelty, and aggressiveness. And on top of everything else, Wu Yu does not respect and does not comply with the laws of the Wu Kingdom. Here Prince Rong appears, who also has many claims against Wu Yu. He says that the hero does not have the honor that an emperor should have, and all because he is obsessed with his martial arts. Wu Yu completely disagrees with these accusations. The crown prince also does not understand why this militarist will appear here. After all, if it wasn't for Wu Yu, a young warrior god of the 5th level of martial arts, then the Wu Kingdom would still be mocked by neighboring countries. And Commander Wu also decided to speak out, since there was such an opportunity. He reports that this concubine Meng had a low and dubious status, and if not for the previous Emperor Yuanzai, the hero Wu Yu would never have received the title of Crown Prince. And now, it seems that a man with the blood of mountains is really vulgar and dissolute. Besides, he is also low. Wu Yu is worse than an animal. Wu Yu sees that earlier the prince was robbed and flogged by the hero's own order, but Commander Wu was convicted and beheaded because of this. It all boils down to the fact that all these people who definitely don't like Wu Yu just framed the hero. But they are too stupid and do not have such great power to do such a thing, which means that there is definitely someone behind all of them who is stronger and more powerful. But what kind of person is this? Wu Yu decides to say out loud that he was definitely framed. These events happen too quickly and unexpectedly. Here the 11th concubine loses her temper. She does not understand at all how Wu Yu dares to argue. He is clearly not in a position to do this right now. Next, the head of the harem asks to summon the immortal Hao Tian to the 20 hall. Wu Yu is even more tense because of the words of the main concubine. The hero is also still unable to stand on his feet. He is only able to sit. Wu Yu recalls that the immortal Hao Tian is the protector of the Wu Kingdom, who was sent from heaven to save the suffering here. It turns out that he does not participate in a deadly war, but only can protect all creatures, but only except demons. He was sent here too. But Wu Yu does not have time to finish his thought, because he is knocked down by the loud conversation of the ministers. They are perplexed by the fact that even the immortals were also alarmed by all these events. One of the ministers says that he thinks that this immortal Hao Tian is more than 100 years old, but he looks like he is a young man. But this minister does not know what kind of immortal skills and abilities he actually possesses. Another minister reports that he is still immortal. Then how can he even look like an ordinary person? It's just impossible. Here the ministers are strongly asked not to make noise, because the immortal Hao Tian is already approaching the 20 hall. Then the entrance gate swings open abruptly, and the immortal guardian appears on the threshold of the hall. Smoke appears around him. Only the figure of the immortal Hao Tian is visible. Then he slowly begins to step inside the 20 hall. In a moment, everyone can fully contemplate the immortal realm of Wu, Hao Tian. Wu Yu immediately greets the great and immortal Hao Tian with a bow, and the hero asks him for justice towards him. Wu Yu thinks that the supreme and immortal Hao Tian is a person who values righteousness and honesty, so he has always been highly respected by Wu Yu's father, and it is the hero who is sure that he will definitely be able to achieve justice and righteousness for himself. 11. The concubine also worships the immortal Hao Tian. She also immediately asks him to punish the sinner Wu Yu. Then Hao Tian finally starts talking. The first thing he does is ask others about what happened today. After a moment, Hao Tian understands the current situation. He tells 11 concubines about it. Further, Hao Tian concludes that the kingdom should not be ruled by an overbearing and vulgar person who also violates the order of things. Wu Yu is shocked. He did not expect that the immortal Hao Tian would not stand on his side. It seems to the hero that the fact that he is being framed is very obvious. Hao Tian concludes that Wu Yu is a man of vulgar behavior, and Hao Tian is ordered by heaven to remove the hero from the throne. Also, the immortal of the Wu Kingdom informs that from this day on, Wu Yu's training in martial arts has been discontinued. which only means that the hero will be immediately sent to the army. Wu Yu is completely at a loss. He doesn't even know how to answer. What? How could all this have happened? How could Hao Tian eliminate the hero without even asking Wu Yu a single question? Hao Tian shifts in places and begins to approach the hero. Then all the ministers present in the 20 hall fall at their feet in front of the immortal. He says that Hao Tian is really very smart and wise. Wu Yu also understands that he is invincible in the Wu realm, and only one immortal Hao Tian is capable of suppressing the hero. Wu Yu, it seems that all this was planned by them all, and Hao Tian is the one who is behind all this conspiracy. Hao Tian is smart and everyone in the Wu kingdom trusts and respects him, so he could have committed such a meanness, because no one in the kingdom would have believed that such a respected person Hao Tian is so mean and insidious. In fact, he approaches Wu Yu and asks him if the hero has something to say in his defense. Then Wu Yu decides to finally say all the things that he really wants to talk about now. He, Wu Yu, lived his life without fear and regret, but today the immortal kingdoms of Wu simply want to destroy him. But the hero really has nothing to say except that. Wu Yu understands that he has now suffered a complete defeat. After all, Hao Tian, the immortal guardian who, it would seem, completely embodies the entire will of heaven, turned out to be nothing more than a vicious and ruthless person. Wu Yu's last hope for honesty and justice has completely failed. Then the hero abruptly and unexpectedly for all those gathered in the 20 hall begins to laugh loudly and fervently. The ministers don't understand how Wu Yu dares to behave like this. You can't be so impolite and reckless right in front of immortal Hao Tian. Hao Tian says that in this case there is nothing left but to give Wu Yu a powder for the destruction of the soul, which the immortal guardian had prepared in advance. Hao Tian decides that there is nothing left but to block Wu Yu's meridians and then completely destroy his cultivation. But Hao Tian himself is not going to give the powder to Wu Yu. He asks someone else to do it. Then the servants of the palace approach the hero, block his hands so that Wu Yu could not resist. Then they begin to pour the powder for the destruction of the soul directly into the mouth of the main character. Wu Yu only thinks that in this life he is the strongest mortal man in the country, but he has no way to compete with Hao Tian, an excellent immortal. And if it suddenly turns out that there is an afterlife in the world. But Wu Yu does not have time to think about all this to the end. The soul destruction powder has already appeared in the hero's mouth. A very strange and unpleasant feeling creeps through his body. The hero is very, very sorry that all these 10 years of hard work and effort were just taken and wasted. All the things for which Wu Yu tried and the goals that the hero wanted to achieve all these years. Now all of Wu Yu's dreams will not be able to come true and become a reality. The ministers continue to say that the hero should be immediately sent to the army, and the law must also be observed. Next, Wu Yu is put in a wooden cage and begins to be taken away from the palace. The hero is already starting outside the city gates of the kingdom of Wu. Here comes Princess Wu Wu, the sister of Crown Prince Wu Yu. The girl is now in great perplexity. She is almost crying. The princess does not understand how all this could have happened to her brother. Wu Yu does his best to calm down his loved one. He tells Sister Wu Wu that today the hero will not have time and will not be able to do anything else. Sister Wu Wu should understand that the heavens wish the hero all the bad things. They definitely intend to kill Wu Yu. Princess Wu Wu tells her brother that she doesn't fully understand all this, but she will continue to believe in Wu Yu. The hero tells Wu Wu's sister that everything will be fine. Wu Yu is a good and honest person who will definitely die with a clear conscience. It's just that this world is unfair and everyone here is against the main character. He doesn't have a single chance to protect himself in any way. Wu Yu says that in the next life he will again become the brother of such a wonderful sister as Princess Wu Wu. The sister is confused. She is not ready to lose her close and dear person in any way. Meanwhile, 2 hours have passed since all these events. The wooden cage with Wu Yu is being taken to the snowy mountains, where it is snowing right now. Snow and cold everywhere. Wu Yu thinks that he is very cold right now. Does the hero also think that he will die here now? He has already completely lost any hope that justice will prevail. But already almost broken and almost given up, there's no point in continuing to fight. He sincerely hates people who are involved in such a fate of the hero. Namely, Wu Yu hates Hao Tian and his concubine. These people were in collusion and conspired against Wu Yu. The hero also thinks that if fate takes pity on Wu Yu and it happens that one day he will be able to be reborn, then he will definitely make Wu Yu pay all his detractors. Wu Yu intends to take revenge for what happened to him. This revenge is sure to be very cruel, then only if Wu Yu is really given the opportunity to be reborn. Here the servants who are carrying the cage with the hero notice that, apparently, Wu Yu has died, and this needs to be urgently reported to the boss. Another person says he will report Wu Yu's death now, but the men clearly doubt that the hero is really dead. But one of the men explains that he thinks that Wu Yu is really already dead. What should they do then? Another person replies that since Wu Yu is dead, then you need to take his body somewhere far away and throw it somewhere in the mountains. Then immediately begin to do this. They lift Wu Yu's exhausted body, carry it a short distance and throw it off the mountainside. Wu Yu's body starts falling down with great speed. Here, the hero's body reaches the ground, and he roughly lands in the cold snow. But then, unexpectedly, something rather strange begins to happen to Wu Yu's body. A small rod with golden-colored inscriptions, which Wu Yu wears around his neck, abruptly begins to grow into the hero's skin and also begins to glow brightly. Next, the rod begins to pulsate. It produces pulses that are large waves that spread further and further. This rod is a heavenly pillar, and it now appears for a reason. The heavenly pillar is getting bigger and bigger. All this is accompanied by loud noises, so Wu Yu is forced to cover his ears with his hands so that his ears will not suffer in any way. So, everything that is happening now is the first stage of the invincible body Vajra technique. Wu Yu understands this, but he also does not know the things that are happening next. What the hell is this? Then a huge creature appears, with eyes shining with lightning and a toothy mouth. The huge being immediately appears to Wu Yu. He says that he is a heavenly Buddha, that is, the great sage of the heavenly palace. The heavenly Buddha informs Wu Yu that if the hero has a destiny, then he should accept the teachings of the heavenly Buddha, and then rebel against heaven, and, in the end, destroy the entire kingdom of Wu. The chapter begins with a Thanksgiving scene by Hao Tian. 11. The concubine sits on her knees and sincerely thanks the immortal Hao Tian for today. Hao Tian replies that it is not worth such gratitude. After all, the 11th concubine is his disciple. Hao Tian further adds that for a cultivator, taking away the power of Crown Prince Wu Yu is a very simple and easy matter. The immortal guardian also says that tomorrow he intends to give an order that will allow Yuan Hao to immediately ascend to the throne. 11. The concubine is in the greatest delight. She once again thanks her immortal lord Hao Tian very much. The woman also announces that she will serve the immortal guardian until the very end of her days. Next, Hao Tian informs his student that his blood flows in Yuan Hao. Although this guy doesn't have any talent for martial arts, that's why Hao Tian can't let Yuan Hao live a gray, boring and dull life in any way. That is why Yuan Hao will fit the place of a mortal emperor. 11. The concubine tells the immortal lord that Wu Yu is extremely experienced in such matters, and even though he was taken and sent to the army, he is still worried that Wu Yu may return to the kingdom of Wu. But Hao Tian asks his student not to worry about such trifles, because the immortal guardian has already instructed Wang King to finish off Wu Yu. Hao Tian is 100% sure that Crown Prince Wu Yu is definitely dead. The immortal guardian will never allow any danger and the fact that he can be caught by surprise. Hao Tian definitely has everything under complete control. It also turns out what he really thinks about his student. He thinks she's a terrible woman, and he doesn't respect her at all. And 11. Concubine admires her immortal master. Her heads are definitely shrouded in deception. She is now unable to see the whole truth in front of her. She also says that thanks to Hao Tian, she feels better and much calmer. Next, the situation with Wu Yu himself is clarified. The snowy mountains are now illuminated by the bright sun, and Wu Yu himself, without a creation, continues to lie in a snowdrift. Then Wu Yu abruptly and unexpectedly opens his eyes. The hero does not believe that he has not died yet. After all, everything pointed to the fact that Wu Yu is waiting for the demise of Wu Yu rises a little and immediately realizes that, among other things, the effect of the destruction of Wu Yu's soul has mysteriously disappeared. But Wu Yu is infinitely sorry that now, the 5th combat heaven of the hero, namely strengthened tendons, a strong body, blood transfusion, great inner strength and strengthened bones are no more. This is really a big loss for Wu Yu. It's a shame that now everything Wu Yu worked so hard on has simply been destroyed. Here the hero recalls the nightmare and the iron rod. As for them, Wu Yu recalls that at the age of 5, when Wu Yu's mother died, he was very, very lonely. But in order to somehow improve the little boy's condition, an old man came to his window every evening and told little Wu Yu different stories. Wu Yu always dreamed of seeing this old man. Because he never fully showed the boy, the hero only heard the old man's voice. But as soon as Wu Yu went outside, the old man immediately disappeared. And, about a year later, one late evening, the old man dropped a mysterious rod and Wu Yu noticed it. Then the old man told Wu Yu that he should always carry this rod with him and one day he would surely save the boy's life. Then Wu Yu sincerely thanked his grandfather for such an unusual gift. And now Wu Yu notices that this very iron staff has disappeared. Was this old man really the great sage Kai Tian Da from the hero's dream? Then Wu Yu realizes that it's useless to think about all this right now. It is better to try to master the immortal body of the Vajra. Wu Yu is now carefully examining his hands. Now he will need them. After all, the first layer of the first level of the Vajra body is the strengthened Vajra body. It turns out that Kai goes straight out of Huagai, then passes through the cloud door and descends into the middle house. Wu Yu assumes the lotus position and begins preparing to master the immortal Vajra body. Night has already fallen, and Wu Yu is still not ready to move from this place. So, 4 whole days pass. Wu Yu has been sitting in the lotus position all this time and preparing for the first layer of the first level of the Vajra body. After that, Wu Yu asks for the heaven-given Vajra to strengthen the flesh and also the blood of the hero. Now Wu Yu can destroy a huge stone with a single punch. Wu Yu is very happy about this. Finally, with the help of great efforts, the first level of martial arts has just been achieved. And this is very cool. Now Wu Yu's strength is roughly equal to the power of 3 warhorses. This only means that it is 3 times more than the hero had in the past heaven. Now, Wu Yu's body has become very strong, and Wu Yu feels definitely much stronger. This technique is simply excellent. Further, Wu Yu does not understand at all why he does not continue working on his strength. The hero immediately decides to start cultivating the second level, and this is strengthening the tendons of the Vajra. Wu Yu trained hard and for a long time, first for 2 days and then for 3 days. He did not finish training strengthening the tendons of the Vajra on day 4. So it's been 6 whole days. Wu Yu has been actively and persistently working all this time in order to achieve his future goals. And so, only after 7 days of exhausting and hard work, the second layer on the body, namely the layer of Vajra tendons, was finally reached. Wu Yu concludes that the Vajra body is truly magnificent and powerful. Wu Yu realizes that his strength is already as much as 5 times greater than that of the most ordinary martial artist. His body is only getting more and more powerful. This is very good. Wu Yu concludes that now his strength and power is equal to 10 warhorses. Now, Wu Yu's strength has almost approached the 4th level of martial arts. But then, Wu Yu's joy is interrupted by something strange. Wu Yu abruptly felt some unknown and strange smell. He notices that there is clearly someone or something in the bushes in this forest. The hero turns around sharply. Now Wu Yu definitely understood that there was a demon all this time. A huge snake of dark color and with huge blue eyes is clearly aggressive towards Wu Yu. Now she is hissing and is definitely ready to attack the hero. Wu Yu abruptly gets into a fighting posture. He is already ready to fight with this demonic snake. But then, gradually, the demon begins to take on a human form. She turns into a girl with a combat weapon. The demonic snake is glad that she was finally able to find Wu Yu. She says that they met him again. Wu Yu immediately recognizes this demon, who is capable of assuming a humanoid appearance. Wu Yu says that this snake is a disciple of one of the Celestials. She is a disciple of Wan King. It is the heavenly resident protecting the country who warmed a demonic snake on his chest. And Wu Yu thinks it's not surprising that thousands of people have disappeared from Wu Yu's capital over the past 10 years. The snake girl says that Wu Yu really did a great job. After all, if the Supreme Master had not instructed the demonic snake to drag Wu Yu's body as proof, then for sure the hero would have faked his own death and would have escaped safely. Wu Yu is shocked. Did the demonic snake think that it could really defeat the hero alone? But the snake is really confident in his words, because it was earlier, in the past, Wu Yu was the strongest martial artist in the Wu Kingdom and was also the only one who mastered the 5th level of martial arts. Back then, the demonic snake was still a little short of Wu Yu, because to some extent it was afraid of the hero. But now, when Wu Yu was struck by the Destroyer of Souls, what is a hero capable of at all? The demonic snake is now very serious. It is definitely determined to eat Wu Yu's entire body, leaving only the head so that the snake has at least some evidence left. The snake girl is already going to attack the hero. Wu Yu is outraged by this opinion of himself. Is the demonic snake looking down on him? Wu Yu was just hoping very much for such a situation. Here, the demonic snake is already beginning to attack Wu Yu, then the hero deftly and sharply evades this capture. Wu Yu at this moment had already prepared his fist for a retaliatory attack, because it was not for nothing that he had been training his body all this time in order to master the 1st and 2nd levels of Vajra, strengthening the body of Vajra and strengthening the tendons of Vajra. Wu Yu hits the demonic snake in the stomach. This blow is so powerful that the demonic snake flies back a few meters. Wu Yu's opponent has no chance against him. The demonic snake did not expect such a turn of events. How so? She says it's just not possible, damn it. Wu Yu was struck by the Destroyer of Souls, but in that case, where does the hero have such a huge power now? The demonic snake Wang Qin touches the place where Wu Yu hit her. It is clear that she is in great pain. Wu Yu analyzes the words of the demonic snake that she said earlier. It turns out that according to Wang Qin, she has only the 4th level of martial arts now, and if you also take into account her snake demon physique, then she is probably the 2nd after Wu Yu himself in the Wu Kingdom. Wu Yu decides that he must definitely finish off the demonic snake Wang Qin while she is injured and briefly immobilized. This must be done in order to avoid any threat in the future. Then Wu Yu begins his new attack on the demonic snake Wang Qin. Wang Qin sees what the hero is going to do, but everything happens so fast that the snake demon does not have time to do anything to prevent this attack. Wu Yu hits the demonic snake Wang Qin, and it flies even further away, while its back crashes into a tree behind it. Wang Qin still does not believe in what is happening. She says that the destroyer of souls could not fail to act. He always acts, there simply could not be any mistake. What the hell is going on here anyway? But Wu Yu is not going to tell the demonic snake Wang Qin in details. He continues to attack the snake. The girl has no choice but to transform the snake back. It transforms quickly and without slowing down. Next, she tells Wu Yu that now he will definitely come to an end. But Wu Yu doesn't hear her at all. Now he's going to attack the demonic snake Wang Qin with his strong leg. The hero kicks the snake with his foot. This blow was of such tremendous force that Wang Qin immediately finds himself with his muzzle pressed to the ground. Now Wu Yu was able to jump onto the snake's head without much difficulty. Wang Qin is completely at a loss. She is very scared of what is happening. Where does the hero get such power from anyway? What happened to him in such a short time? Meanwhile, Wu Yu takes a huge boulder in his right hand and immediately begins to beat the demonic snake Wang Qin on its muzzle. He does it with very active and fast movements to finally finish off such an undesirable enemy. The demonic snake is in a lot of pain. She is ready to start crying and immediately asks Wu Yu to spare the snake. She sincerely asks not to kill her. Wu Yu clearly doesn't want to do this. What does it mean? Spare the demonic snake Wang Qin. Wu Yu definitely intends not to do this. On the contrary, he is going to tear the snake into 1,000 small pieces. But the snake keeps begging Wu Yu for mercy. She says that if he does not stop killing her, but she intends to tell the hero one of the secrets that is somehow connected with the death of Wu Yu's father. And at this moment, Wang Qin thinks that her insidious plan is almost ready. It remains only to talk Wu Yu's teeth and deceive the main character, the demonic snake, without thinking twice about the fact that the ones who killed Wu Yu's father were Mr. Wang Qin and also his concubine. Wu Yu is immediately distracted from finishing off Wang Qin. What did she even just say? The hero is completely perplexed by what is happening. Then, in general, it is not surprising that Wu Yu's father died of some kind of illness literally 6 months later, and he was in the prime of his powers. So that's what really happened. Wu Yu was finally able to understand everything. And the demonic snake Wang Qin continues to tell the details of this murder. She says that in order to competently and without unnecessary suspicion kill Wu Yu's father, the owner of the snake spent a fairly decent amount of his poison. It turns out that all these poisons were mixed into him by the hero's father with the own hands of one of the concubines. The demonic snake Wang Qin is only waiting for Wu Yu to get angry from this true story, just invented by the insidious snake, because this is the only way Wang Qin can survive. And Wu Yu is really starting to get more and more angry. He is actually beside himself with the useful information that Wu Yu has just learned. Here, the demonic snake Wang Qin sees that Wu Yu has completely lost concentration on this fight. She realizes that she has a chance to kill the hero. She says out loud that she has just deceived Wu Yu, so she immediately decides to attack the hero in order to kill him. Wu Yu wasn't ready for this. He really lost all his concentration and is now falling down the cliff. Now the hero finds himself in the water. Apparently, he will hit the water of the Bibo River quite hard and painfully. Next, the demonic snake Wang Qin transforms back into a human. She, all pretty wounded, says that her death was definitely close enough. But it's very good that she managed to escape so cleverly, with the help of this river. After all, it's for sure that having fallen from such a great height into the Bibo River, an ordinary person is definitely doomed to imminent death. The demonic snake Wang Qin examines the water, although she does not see Wu Yu's corpse, but the job is definitely done. But, much to the regret of the demonic snake Wang Qin, Wu Yu is alive. Now he comes to his senses and tears his eyes off. He looks around. Wu Yu immediately realizes that this place is definitely not familiar to him. And why is the Kai energy so clearly felt here? There is also a grandfather in this small house. He is very happy that Wu Yu has finally come to his senses and woken up. Wu Yu is very surprised to see this person in front of him. Wu Yu had definitely heard this old man's voice earlier. Yes, this is the same grandfather who told Wu Yu fairy tales as a child to calm him down. And after all, this old man gave the hero the same iron rod. Wu Yu decides to hurriedly ask his grandfather about it. Did they by any chance see him about 10 years ago? But Grandpa denies all this. How is this possible? After all, this grandfather has been living in these mountains for 80 years, and he has never left them at all. Then how could he see Wu Yu? Then Wu Yu decides to ask Grandpa another question. He is very interested in where they are now. Immediately Grandfather replies that they are now at the gates of immortality. Wu Yu is very surprised when he hears this information. What's going on here anyway? What other gates of immortality? Old Grandpa is very surprised by such a question from Wu Yu. Has the hero never heard of Zionmen? As it turns out, from this name it can be understood that Zionmen is a kind of sect that is directly engaged in cultivating immortal guardians. Wu Yu tells Grandpa that he has heard before that immortal cultivators usually never interfere in any human affairs, because few people know about them at all. But that's where all of Wu Yu's knowledge ends. Wu Yu sincerely thanks Grandfather for his rescue. He also tells the old man that his name is Wu Yu. Then, the hero becomes interested in what his savior's name is. Then he directly asks his grandfather about his name. The girl replies that his name is Sun Wudao, but he is not at all the one who saved Wu Yu. In fact, it was the headmaster who rescued him from the Babo River and also appointed Wu Yu as a servant here. Then Wu Yu asks permission from Sun Wudao to go out right now and immediately look around. He wonders where he really is now. What kind of place is this? Sun Wudao says that to begin with, the hero will have to drink this ginseng soup, which was previously prepared by his grandfather himself. Then Wu Yu obeys Grandpa and starts drinking ginseng soup. As expected from Zionmen, this soup seems to be very unusual. It really has an interesting taste. Wu Yu drank all the ginseng soup quickly enough. Next, Sun Wudao asks the hero to follow him. They need to go somewhere. Then Wu Yu goes outside. The hero immediately has to cover his face with his hand, because it's very bright outside. Then Wu Yu realizes something that surprises him very much. It turns out that the Heavenly Sword sect is indeed in the sky. It is located on a huge stone that hovers in the sky above other buildings that are already located on the ground. Wu Yu understands that this is a real paradise on Earth. It's just unbelievable. It really resembles a real miracle. Next, Wu Yu decides to express his emotions to Sun Wudao. He explains that what he now sees with his own eyes is simply incredible. It turns out that such places really exist in this amazing world. This is not a fiction at all. Sun Wudao explains to the hero that their immortal sect has many arts that are directly related to swords, which is why it is called the Heavenly Sword School. Zionmen itself is located among the Blue Mountains that dominate the lands among some other countries. It is here that countless students of the Heavenly Sword School live, compared to the country itself, which has a small size. Su Yu is very surprised, because the Heavenly Sword sect is a very powerful name. Then Grandpa Sun Wudao hands out new clothes for Sun Wudao. Then the hero needs to change more, and then follow Sun Wudao to the mountain. And then, during their little Wu Yu walk, Grandpa Sun Wudao will tell the hero in more detail about our sect. Wu Yu is very happy about this. He is very interested in learning the following details about this amazing place. So, the strong one in this Heavenly Sword sect is the main supreme mentor, and is also a legendary immortal celestial. Sun Wudao says that the elders follow after him, and only then the main disciples of the Heavenly School follow. And only after them are the so-called external disciples. Wu Yu continues to listen attentively to Sun Wudao. Then Grandpa continues his story further. It turns out that there is also a certain difference in status between the main students and the external students. And since the number of external disciples is about 100 times the number of all the main disciples. But with all this, most of them here are only servants for those who have a higher status. And they have, for example, to take care of the nutrition of the mentor, and the celestial and the most important elders, the main disciples and external disciples. Therefore, it is necessary to grow certain heavenly herbs for them, then feed all their spiritual beasts. And they are also obliged to take care of cleanliness from the palaces themselves. That's all the servants work here. Sun Wudao also explains that there are hundreds and hundreds of servants working here for the main students directly and only dozens of servants for external students. Also, there are a number of certain rules that absolutely all servants are obliged to observe without any exception. All servants in the Heaven of the Sword sect are forbidden to leave this room without permission to do so. All this will happen until the servant reaches the 6th level of preparation of his mortal body before the person reaches his 15 years. Sun Wudao also tells Wu Yu that already at the 6th level of martial arts, servants have the opportunity to take and pass the certification and after passing it become a full-fledged disciple of the Heavenly Sword sect. And so, in this way, servants no longer have to be just servants for others anymore, because now you can start cultivating your immortality. But Sun Wudao himself is sorry that he was only one step away from this and missed such an opportunity in the distant past. Sun Wudao and Wu Yu pass by the servants who are watching one of them trying his luck and trying to become an external disciple. And this guy really does it. Now he is a full-fledged external student. And only now does he have the opportunity to start cultivating his immortality. Wu Yu analyzes what Grandpa Wudao said. He was talking about 15 years. But after all, the hero will be 16 years old in 2 months. Wu Yu is very sorry, because if he hadn't been stuffed with powder then, but Wu Yu would have been able to safely move to the 6th level of martial arts in just a few days. Here Sun Wudao makes a very important emphasis on the fact that Wu Yu, being a servant, the most important rule is not to offend immortal guardians and immortal celestials in any case. It does not matter at all whether the hero is an external student. You always need to remember that at any moment they can kill for such an insult. Wu Yu understood this. He promises Grandpa Sun Wudao that the hero will definitely remember this, and definitely will not risk his life. Here Sun Wudao looks into the sky and notices that an immortal celestial is flying there. Here, Grandpa warns Wu Yu about this, and he asks the hero to bow his head quickly and without slowing down. After all, this celestial Su Yanli herself is the mistress of Yanli Peak, on which they all live. Wu Yu is delighted with all this, so he ignores Grandpa Sun Wudao's words. Here, Grandpa puts his hand on the hero's head and tilts it down on his own. Now it looks like Wu Yu is paying respect to the celestial Su Yanli. Also, it turns out that she is directly a direct disciple of the mentor himself, and, on top of everything else, has a very high status among other main students. All this is about Ka Su Yanli, who is now flying in the sky, sitting on a white and black bird that moves with a girl on her body. Further, Sun Wudao says that to their great happiness with Wu Yu, the celestial Su Yanli did not notice all this. Otherwise, if she suddenly saw that Wu Yu would not have bowed before her, then Wu Yu would definitely have died. Wu Yu is very shocked by this information. It turns out that the path of the immortal guardians is even more dangerous than it seemed at first glance. Here, Wu Yu wants to know when the next certification for the servants will take place so that they become full-fledged disciples of the Heavenly Sword sect. Therefore, the hero asks Uncle Sun about it. Then, Grandpa Sun Wudao says that this certification will take place in exactly 2 months. Meanwhile, Sun Wudao and Wu Yu came to the place. Now the heroes have a view of the Garden of Heavenly Beasts. Now, Sun Wudao's task for today is to take care of them. The Garden of Heavenly Beasts is very beautiful, where there is a waterfall, beautiful flora and fauna. Here, the head assistant Zhao Chuan asks Sun Wudao about what kind of person is walking next to him. Sun Wudao and Wu Yu greet Zhao Chuan's henchmen and other people. Grandpa immediately says that next to him is a guy named Wu Yu. Then, Zhao Chuan's henchman remembers that it seems that this Wu Yu was picked up by their mentor. Since this has already happened, then this guy must definitely be strong, since he was able to survive in the Babo River. The mentor decides that he needs to take and learn as much as possible about this mysterious newcomer. Here, Zhao Chuan's henchman turns to Wu Yu and abruptly, immediately, asks him to show him what Wu Yu is capable of. Wu Yu is scared. He has just recently found himself in a new place and is not quite used to everything in this Heavenly Sword sect yet. He would like to get used to it more, and then there follows such an unexpected request from Zhao Chuan's henchman. Here, Sun Wudao noticeably begins to get nervous because of everything that is happening. He explains to Zhao Chuan's henchman that Wu Yu's body is still very, very weak. And besides, Zhao Chuan's henchman has already reached the whole 4th level in preparing an immortal body. And therefore, Wu Yu will clearly not be able to make any competition for Zhao Chuan's strong and powerful henchman. Therefore, Zhao Chuan is very angry about this. He calls it all a waste of time. He talks very rudely to Wu Yu. He immediately tells him that if he does not continue to fool around, he will pay for such stupid recklessness with his life. Then Sun Wudao tells his assistant Zhao Chuan that he should not worry about all this at all. After all, if Wu Yu does something wrong, then Sun Wudao himself will be able to do it for the hero. Then Zhao Chuan's henchman asks you to listen to him very carefully. It turns out that several other celestials will have to visit Ms. Su today. That is why the servants Wu Yu and Sun Wudao should take care of the cranes in the Heavenly Garden of Beasts very carefully and carefully. He also warns the heroes that if suddenly something goes wrong, then only one thing will happen. They will have to pay with their miserable and insignificant lives. Wu Yu and Sun Wudao answer him that they understood everything and immediately get down to business. Zhao Chuan's henchman then rides a crane into the sky and tells Su Yanli that today he came to his elder sister Su in order to find out the way to gain immortality. He also asks the girl about whether she brought the same thank you gift with you. Su Yanli further asks the hero about whether he really wants to take and pay off Su's sister in this way for his poor or even terrible performance in mastering cultivation. Zhao Chuan's henchman starts laughing at Su Yanli's words, but in fact this is a man's defensive reaction. The whole Celestial has just voiced the whole truth. Meanwhile, Wu Yu and Sun Wudao are standing and bowing their heads before the Celestial. Wu Yu had already memorized this rule and followed the rule of the Heavenly Sword sect without his grandfather's reminders. Next, Sun Wudao warns Wu Yu that he does not need to look into the eyes of the Celestial in any case. Wu Yu understands everything perfectly himself. He tells Grandpa Sun for reminding the hero about it once again. Further, several Celestials pass by Wu Yu, but he, as Sun Wudao told him, did not dare to raise his head. All this time he continued to look at the ground. But then Wu Yu abruptly becomes very sad because of all this. After all, if it wasn't for Duan Hong-san, then perhaps Wu Yu could also have become one of all these Celestials. The hero is very sorry that now he is only at the level of a servant, but he could be much higher now. Meanwhile, it was already evening. All this time, Sun Wudao and Wu Yu are putting things in order in the Heavenly Garden of Beasts. They sweep the paths in the garden and also feed the head cranes. Then, unexpectedly, the main disciple Jin appears in the Heavenly Garden of Beasts. He abruptly begins to be indignant after he saw the condition of his crane. Who dared to do such a thing to the crane of the main student? Disciple Jin is beside himself with rage, because his crane has obviously drunk too much water, and is now lying on the ground, because he felt bad. He immediately becomes interested in who actually fed his crane. Then Zhao Chuan's henchman abruptly appears, who decides to blame all the blame on Wu Yu. He tells the main disciple Jin that it was Wu Yu who was responsible for this heavenly crane. But in fact, Wu Yu has nothing to do with this at all. All this time he was busy with completely different things, and he would not have had time to feed the heavenly crane of the main disciple of Tisnizia in any way. Zhao Chuan's henchman behaved rudely and disrespectfully towards Wu Yu, because he brazenly took and framed the main character. Zhao Chuan thinks that the newcomer is definitely in trouble and full. He is very interested in how these events will develop further. Wu Yu immediately tells the main disciple Jin that he definitely did not do this. But the main disciple is not going to listen to these pathetic excuses. He takes the whip and immediately intends to punish Wu Yu for his such a gross mistake. Immediately, without any slowing down, Wu Yu receives a very strong and powerful whip blow on the body. This blow was really strong, which even knocks Wu Yu off his feet. The main disciple Jin tells Wu Yu that the hero is a very insignificant servant, and how he even dared to take and so harm his crane. Wu Yu finally falls to the ground, then the hero tries to get to his feet. But the main disciple Jin is determined to hit the hero again. Then, Sun Wudao decides to protect Wu Yu from the new ones. He tells the Celestial that in fact it was he, Sun Wudao, who fed the Jin crane. Therefore, Wu Yu does not need to be punished. On the contrary, he needs to be spared. Wu Yu thinks that it is quite obvious that Zhao Chuan appeared here only because of the hero himself, which only means that he will not be able to blame the girl Sun for anything. Then, Wu Yu says out loud that the one who did this and was so guilty before the Celestial, he should bear full responsibility for it, regardless of any other circumstances. Poor disciple Jin is very surprised by such a harsh and even audacious statement by Wu Yu. He says that the hero certainly does not take courage. This Celestial most of all cannot tolerate those stupid and pathetic people who are devoid of any competence, but still full of some kind of unreasonableness with courage. Another Celestial behind the main disciple says that such garbage deserves only death. And if Jin doesn't kill Wu Yu right now, then the other servants will stop observing the decorum established here. We need to teach everyone else a lesson. The main student agrees with the words of another Celestial. She is absolutely right now. Then the Celestial Jin strikes Wu Yu again, but much harder with his whip. Now is the time to teach all these idiots a lesson, including Wu Yu. This whip strike was really very strong. Wu Yu at that time flies even further and now crashes into a small pile of stones. The Celestial tells the main disciple Jin that Wu Yu probably died after such a thing. An ordinary person would definitely not be able to survive. She says to forget about this guy already. The Celestial thinks that Wu Yu really should have died already and recovered to the next world. Now, it's time for all the Celestials to leave the Heavenly Garden of Beasts. But, much to the misfortune of these arrogant Celestials, Wu Yu is definitely still alive. The hero begins to clear his throat. He also thinks that in these 2 months he simply has to join this Zion Men. For Wu Yu is very, very serious. He definitely wants to take revenge on other Celestials for today's humiliation. It must happen sooner or later. Wu Yu also thinks that this revenge extends to Zhao Chuan's henchmen. This terrible and dishonest man who framed the hero and simply blamed all the blame on Wu Yu, although the hero was definitely not to blame for all this. Here, Sun Wudao runs to Wu Yu to help him get up on his nails. Grandpa also says that he himself understands perfectly well that Wu Yu hates them very much. But still, the hero should not do such thoughtless things. Sun Wudao says that after all, you should always take into account that mortals cannot fight with immortal celestials in any way. Sun Wudao also asks Wu Yu to promise him that he will no longer carry himself like this. Then Wu Yu replies to his grandfather that they cannot forget such arrogance and such humiliation that happened to him. Wu Yu is also very interested in why Grandpa Sun Wudao is so kind to him. Grandpa says that all this is really nothing. After all, this is the fate of Sun Wudao. He has always lived like this and will continue to live like this. Sun Wudao further says that Wu Yu, unlike his grandfather, is still very young. And that's why Grandpa really hopes that Wu Yu will be able to live a good and happy life without any bullying from other people, like his Uncle Sun. After these words, Wu Yu becomes even more furious. The hero definitely realizes that he cannot promise Sun Wudao this in any way. He decides that since Wu Yu has an indestructible Vajra body, and that is why he wants to make sure to make all his efforts to take and join the rest of the Celestials, and only then will certainly take revenge on them for today's situation. Meanwhile, it's been 10 whole days. All these days, Wu Yu has been actively training his body. So, 10 days have already passed, so it definitely shouldn't be too far to the 3rd level of the indestructible Vajra body, and, accordingly, the golden flame bone is also not far away. Now Wu Yu is actively training on one of the trees in the forest. Wu Yu has been training so actively that this poor tree has broken here and has already fallen to the ground. It turns out that Zhao Chuan's henchman has been watching this training all this time. Here Wu Yu remembers that he was so deeply immersed in his own training that he completely forgot that you always need to pay attention to your observers. Zhao Chuan's henchman makes a very strange face. He calls Wu Yu a very lucky man. Now, the subordinates of Zhao Chuan's henchmen are discussing Wu Yu. Someone from this pitiful crowd says that earlier, Sun Wudao said that Wu Yu survived after he was whipped. They conclude that something absolutely wrong is going on here. The other guy says that Wu Yu must have been very, very lucky, that's all. Then, Zhao Chuan's henchman asks Wu Yu about what kind of treasure he actually received. A secret book or, conversely, some kind of mysterious pill. The hero urgently needs to tell about his secret, otherwise Wu Yu will have to die. Zhao Chuan's henchmen and his people clearly underestimate Wu Yu. They also allow themselves too much in their statements. Here, Wu Yu honestly replies that he definitely has nothing to give to Zhao Chuan's henchmen. Next, the hero thinks that this henchman Zhao Chuan, according to the rumors that Wu Yu heard earlier, is now at the 4th level of body training. And this only means that now the strength of Zhao Chuan's henchmen is equal to the strength of about 20 horses. And this already means that Zhao Chuan has exactly 2 times more strength than Wu Yu himself, because he now only has the strength of about 10 horses. Wu Yu will have to try very hard to defeat Zhao Chuan's henchmen. Here, one of the people of Zhao Chuan's henchmen tells his master that this brat Wu Yu is simply too stubborn, so the best solution is to get rid of the main character as soon as possible. Then, Zhao Chuan's henchman tells this man that he gives him the opportunity to take and distinguish himself now. Zhao Chuan's man should knock out Wu Yu's teeth, and only after that they will all look at whether he will be able to clownish with people who are higher than Wu Yu in rank and status. A man who is under the power of Zhao Chuan's henchmen. He is already rushing into battle with Wu Yu. The man asks his master to look at how he will now send Wu Yu to heaven with one of his strong blows. Wu Yu thinks that this guy is actually a complete loser and a loser, but how dare he even talk to Wu Yu like that? Here, Wu Yu decides to hit this guy first. He strikes with a powerful kick right into the stomach of subordinate Zhao Chuan. Wu Yu says that it's better to take and use this person for his warm-up. The man immediately flies away from Wu Yu very far. This is clearly not what all these vile people hoped for. Assistant Zhao Chuan and all his people have already noticeably tensed up. Now they are not laughing at all, because they have just seen that Wu Yu clearly poses a certain danger. He has power, and Wu Yu clearly understands how to use it correctly. Zhao Chuan's henchman still doesn't understand why this Wu Yu is so strong. Seeing that their comrade and part-time subordinate Zhao Chuan, then they decide what to take and attack Wu Yu with their whole group. Exactly, you need to attack the hero altogether, because it is unlikely that Wu Yu will be able to resist 4 opponents at the same time. They do not hesitate to make a quick decision to avenge their just humiliated brother. They run at Wu Yu, preparing to attack the hero. But Wu Yu doesn't care how many rivals he will have. He says that they were the first to start it, so they are to blame for everything that is happening now. Then the hero begins to defend himself. Wu Yu also asks them not to blame him for anything later. Then Wu Yu starts attacking Zhao Chuan's subordinates in response. He takes one of the guys, grabs him by the head and grabs his head so hard, so this guy literally punches the ground with his head. The other guys are diligently trying to somehow hurt Wu Yu, but they only get unsuccessful attempts. Meanwhile, Wu Yu punches another opponent in the face with his fist and informs that he is definitely not going to hold back in this fight. Next, he knocks his knee into the stomach of his other opponent with turquoise hair. Now, Zhao Chuan's henchman sees that Wu Yu has very correct and refined movements, and also the hero has a very strong body. It all boils down to the fact that Wu Yu is far from the most ordinary person. It seems that Zhao Chuan will have to give his all to cope with Wu Yu and teach him a lesson. Meanwhile, Wu Yu thinks that his new and immortal Vajra body is so strong and powerful that even ordinary attacks are not able to cause Wu Yu absolutely no harm and damage at all. Wu Yu concludes that such a sharp and quick revenge is so great. Wu Yu has already defeated all the subordinates of Zhao Chuan's henchmen, and now it's time for Zhao Chuan himself to join this fight. Wu Yu has already challenged Zhao Chuan's henchmen. Now it's really his turn. Zhao Chuan's henchman says that Wu Yu is a very heartless person, and does he really allow himself to think that a hero with only one power of his body will be able to cope with Zhao Chuan's sword? The man says that Wu Yu should just take and die, but Wu Yu laughs at the words of Zhao Chuan's henchman. Then he rushes into the attack without hesitation. He decides to use the fist of the dragon, which is wrapped in a tiger. It's time for Wu Yu to experience this powerful punch. Here, Zhao Chuan's henchman says that Wu Yu simply has not fully realized his own strength yet. Here, Wu Yu misses and misses Zhao Chuan's henchman. Therefore, his powerful dragon fist wrapped in a tiger cannot be used in this attack. Zhao Chuan's henchman tells Wu Yu if he really thinks that any stupid person can become a caretaker of the Garden of Heavenly Beasts. These words mean that Zhao Chuan's henchman is not an ordinary person, so Wu Yu will have to sweat a lot in this fight. Here, the defeated subordinates of Mr. Zhao Chuan will tell their master that he took and dealt with Wu Yu. He needs to be killed, but he must give away the treasure that supplies Wu Yu with this mysterious and powerful power. Yes, we really need to deal with this arrogant guy. Further, Wu Yu only gets more and more serious. He is definitely aware that this Zhao Chuan is already at the stage called inner fortitude. Wu Yu understands that now Mr. Zhao's entire body is as if it was forged from steel. In addition, he has the right and measured breathing. It really will not be so easy to cope with him. The subordinates of Zhao Chuan's henchmen believe that their master will definitely be able to defeat Wu Yu. After all, this bastard Wu Yu is one of Sun Wudao's people. One of these guys says that he is literally going to throw this old man off the cliff tomorrow. Sun Wudao will definitely become excellent food for vultures. Another subordinate agrees with such a harsh opinion of his comrade, because it's Grandpa Sun Wudao who has been bothering everyone's eyes for a very long time. Mr. Zhao Chuan says that he is already ready to fight with Wu Yu. He picks up his pearl flower sword. Zhao Chuan's henchman is really doing what Wu Yu asked for. But Wu Yu was ready for this attack. In order to evade the sword, he actively uses the ghostly gait of a monkey. Wu Yu also heard that these terrible people were going to kill Uncle Sun. But now they are all in a very critical situation, and only by fighting for life and death. Then only for this reason will Wu Yu and Sun Wudao be able to survive and protect themselves. But Wu Yu also thinks that, however, even this henchman Zhao Chuan owns the martial art of the middle rank of the national treasure. Meanwhile, the hero continues to dodge the blows of the pearl flower sword. But all these blows are passing by and by. Mr. Zhao Chuan considers the hero a great coward. He only knows how to dodge and escape from a direct battle. Zhao Chuan's henchman sincerely wishes Wu Yu to die as soon as possible. Zhao Chuan decides to act more seriously, and he was finally able to touch Wu Yu's pearl flower with his sword. Here, Wu Yu, struck by the sword of Zhao Chuan's henchman, flies into the nearest tree and hits it hard. But Wu Yu tolerates this serious blow more or less well. He is incredibly glad that he managed to get his golden bones at the 3rd level of the immortal Vajra body before this fight. For Wu Yu would otherwise have already been killed by this pearl flower sword of Zhao Chuan's henchman. Here, the subordinates of their master say that Wu Yu is already a dead man. They strongly ask the gentleman that he first cut off all of Wu Yu's limbs and then thoroughly interrogate him. Others also agree with this scenario, which has just been announced. Indeed, it is necessary to torture Wu Yu to tell the whole truth, and then they can throw him into the mountains to feed a wild wolf. Then, Zhao Chuan's henchman makes another swing with the pearl flower sword. He tells Wu Yu to finally take and accept his fate, and accept his miserable defeat. Mr. Zhao Chuan is already striking with his sword, but then Wu Yu grabs this sword with his bare hands alone and stops the attack coming at him. Wu Yu says that Zhao Chuan's henchmen did not even dream of his victory. Everything will definitely not turn out the way the master wants it. Zhao Chuan's henchman, like his loyal subordinates, is completely at a loss right now. What's going on at all? How does Wu Yu have the strength for such an action? Subordinates all shout with one voice that such a thing is impossible in any way. But Wu Yu has already done it. He managed to restrain the onslaught of the Pearl Flower Dream on his own. Next, Wu Yu uses his blue dragon fist and punches Zhao Chuan right in the face. The hero clearly says that he is not ready to put up with his fate under any circumstances. Zhao Chuan's henchman is even more perplexed. But what kind of creature is this? How did he get such a strong man like Mr. Zhao Chuan? Wu Yu is very happy that everything went as he planned. And if it wasn't for this powerful breakthrough of the Vajra bones, then this pearl flower sword would have broken Wu Yu's arm. The subordinates of the Lord are in complete shock. Did Wu Yu just take and kill their Lord Zhao? It also just means that according to the laws of the Heavenly Sword sect, Wu Yu should definitely be executed. The guys are very sorry for their strong master Zhao Chuan. How could he possibly lose to this weakling Wu Yu? Now, Wu Yu turns his attention to his subordinates. He says that they had previously discussed how he was going to kill Wu Yu himself today, and tomorrow throw the grandfather of the hero's son Wu Dao off the cliff to feed the vultures. Wu Yu asks again about whether these guys really discussed all this earlier. But then the guys, seeing all the power and strength of Wu Yu, and also fearing that they will be killed themselves later, decide to tell the hero that they did not say all this. Perhaps Wu Yu didn't just misunderstand everything. Here Wu Yu says that he, in his entire life, killed only two types of people. The first, the most cruel and insidious, and also those who harbored a deep hatred for other people. Wu Yu takes the pearl flower sword of Mr. Zhao Chuan and kills the guys with clear and fast movements, one by one. Wu Yu concludes that they were all too pathetic, and they completely do not meet the requirements of the hero. The guy immediately thanks the great sage Buddha Kai Tian for giving Wu Yu his second life and also the opportunity to get such power. Also, the hero concludes that the pearl flower sword is pretty good. Wu Yu decides that the best solution would be to hide it for now. But when Wu Yu passes his entrance exam, then only then will the hero be able to use it. He immediately buries the sword in the ground. In the meantime, one of the Celestials is watching all this. She really wants to know what kind of transformation Wu Yu was able to get. Apparently, this power is really good, since the hero managed to kill Zhao Chuan's henchmen. But the hero does not notice that they were being monitored. Now he is more busy with his thoughts. Wu Yu thinks that with the current level of recovery of Vajra's body, most of the hero's wounds will have to heal by about tomorrow morning. And, nevertheless, Wu Yu decides that the wounds on the guy's hands should not be shown to son Wu Dao, because the uncle should not be forced to worry about it. Wu Yu decides that it is already necessary to return to son Wu Dao's house. The hero also thinks that Uncle Sun is probably already asleep. The guy quietly opens the door to the. Then Wu Yu notices a note on the table in the house and decides to read it right away. It says that Wu Yu needs to drink the decoction that son Wu Dao sentenced, so his wounds will have to heal faster. Wu Yu really wants Uncle Sun not to worry about him, but the hero really wants to fulfill this unfulfilled wish of son Wu Dao in this entrance exam. He remembers the words of his grandfather that once upon a time he was only one step away from this. And now he has been serving the Celestials for 80 years, although it is quite possible that son Wu Dao's life could have turned out completely differently, and he would not have to go through all these humiliations and insults in his direction. That is why Wu Yu thinks that after he joins this heavenly sect of immortal Celestials, and after that, he will never take his eyes off those who previously mistreated the hero, and at least did some harm to him. Meanwhile, it's been a whole 2 days later. The actions take place at the main peak of Babo, that is, at the heavenly peak. And to be even more precise, in the heavenly palace of the Celestials, which is located at this very peak. Here, the Celestial, who had previously seen what Wu Yu had done, decides to tell her main mentor about this situation. She's already finishing her report. Then, the mentor asks what the Celestial is going to do next. The girl, without thinking twice, recalls one of the many proverbs. It is not his own fault that a person was envied. And then the Celestial remembers what the mentor once taught the girl himself. Namely, he believes that the ways of all immortal guardians are actually the hard way of a predator. That is why the Celestial declares that she definitely intends to take for herself the mysterious treasure that this insidious Wu Yu owns. The Supreme Master of the Heavenly Sword Sect Feng Zui tells Chu Yanli that according to his principles, the Babo cultivation method is a very significant and great talent that any diligent and skillful student can comprehend. and is a reliable teacher of the girl. He says that with his cultivation methods, Su Yanli will be able to reach the golden core stage and also the level of his wise mentor Feng Zui. Su Yanli says that everything is like that, and from now on, the girl will focus on learning the heavenly sword technique of Feng Zui. The mentor is really very happy about this. He also informs his dear student that she simply has to master the enormous willpower to contemptuously look at this world together with her mentor. And even though this path of the immortal guardians is very thorny and dangerous, it is also necessary to be a worthy person. And bullying weaker people is definitely not one of Feng Zui's principles. Su Yanli immediately says that she has already understood everything. Now, the mentor says that the celestial is already free and can go. He also adds that Wu Yu has the makings to also become a celestial. And since the hero is a member of the peak of Su Yanli, it is she who should take care of Wu Yu as best as possible. The girl obediently agrees with her mentor. A month has passed since all these events. Sun Wudao tells Wu Yu that he should not go outside today in any case. He'd better rest in his room tonight. After all, it is reported that Zhao Chuan's henchmen and the rest of his people died because of some angry demon. Then Wu Yu asks Grandpa Sun Wudao not to worry about all this. The hero will not leave the limits of the heavenly garden of beasts, and certainly is not going to go far from this place. Su Yu also asks Grandpa to call him when it's time to start their work. Sun Wudao agrees with this, but in any case, very strongly asks the hero to be very careful and careful. Wu Yu notices that this old man treats him like his own son. Therefore, Wu Yu must definitely surprise everyone so that the girl's son would be proud of him. Now, the time has come for the quadruple immortal Vajra body. These are the 5 spiritual organs. And if he can separate the spirit of pure gold, the spirit of purple gold, the spirit of yellow gold, the spirit of white gold, and the spirit of black gold, and by connecting them with the 5 organs of Wu Yu, then everything will be perfect. And before connecting them, Wu Yu has to break all his 5 organs, and this is very difficult. But by the strong tension of his body, the hero tries to do it. Wu Yu also understands that he has only one and only chance. The hero cannot fail in any way. And so, Wu Yu finally managed to reach the 4th stage of the perfect mortal body of the 5 spiritual organs. The hero could not have expected that this perfectly completed stage 4 of the perfect body would be equal to the strength of 134 horses. And it is much stronger than the usual stage 6 of the perfect body. This is definitely the last day as a servant. And tomorrow Wu Yu will finally join the heavenly sect. Here, Sun Wudao says that it's time to work. Wu Yu reminds Grandpa that there will be entrance exams tomorrow, and he asks Grandpa to come watch them. Sun Wudao agrees. But here, the Celestials, who were previously involved in beating the hero, descend from the cranes to the ground. Sun Wudao wanted to help Wu Yu escape, but it was too late. They see that the hero is not dead after all. Wu Yu understands that now he and the celestial Jin are equal in strength, but their statuses differ. Then it's better not to create any problems now. Wu Yu decides to behave respectfully with the celestials. But then another external student intervenes, Hua Kayanu, who considers Sita Jin a weakling who can't even kill a servant successfully. She says that if her crane had been mistreated, she would have simply killed this man. Wu Yu does not want to complicate this situation, but he is also not going to be on the sidelines. Then Jin again can't disgrace himself in front of other celestials. He takes out his whip again and almost hits Wu Yu. But suddenly something strange happens and someone hits Jin in the face, and he crashes into the stones. The guy is outraged. Who dared to do this to him? Then he sees that it was the terrible Sister Su. But why is she here? Then Su Yanli says that Jin and his trio are forbidden to appear on her peaks. She says that Wu Yu is also part of this mountain, and if he needs to be punished, then it should be done by the Celestial herself, and not by Jin with her friends. Then, Jin and his girlfriend start threatening Jin's older brother for 30 years, and his abilities far surpass Su Yanli's. But they have nothing more to say, and, angry, they leave Yanli Mountain. Wu Yu is very grateful to the Celestial for this. Su Yanli says not to take it into your head. Wu Yu and Sun Wudao can calmly exhale. Then Grandpa explains to the hero where he will conduct the exam. It's a long way, so Wu Yu should move out tonight. Next, Wu Yu and Sun Wudao are already at the peak of the elevation, the place of the exam. The hero himself says that Grandpa will be able to observe everything first, and Wu Yu himself has to go down for now. Wu Yu runs to his goal. He asks everyone to burn a little, and in a few moments Wu Yu will definitely get into the heavenly sect of the Celestials.